2017. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Keller?
Here.
Mr. Browning?
Here.
Mr. Rohr?
Here.
Mr. Hellinger?
Here.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Here.
Mayor Riggle?
Here. Tonight's invocation will be given by Pastor Brewer with Life Point. If you'll all please rise, and then it'll be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Well, let's go ahead and pray. Heavenly Father, as we come before you tonight and we start this meeting, I'd like to just pause and say, God, thank you for who you are. God, thank you for the country and the city and the state that we live in and the freedoms that we enjoy. Father, thank you for the men and women here tonight. God, as we discuss things, as we make decisions, I pray that you would give these men and women, God, wisdom and clarity of thought. And Father, as discussions are had and decisions are made, that those things would ultimately glorify you and be for the benefit of our city. God, we love you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Number 4 is the approval of the motion summary of the regular meeting of council held June 26th as recorded and transcribed. What's the wish of council?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Hellinger. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 5 is the consent agenda. Elaine, if you'll please read this into the record.
Item A, acceptance of the motion summary for the Shade Tree Commission meeting held May 23rd, 2017. Item B, acceptance of the motion summary for the Historic Preservation Commission meeting held May 24th, 2017. Item C, acceptance of the motion summary for the Civil Service Commission meeting held May 3rd, 2017. Item D, acceptance of the motion summary for the Planning Commission meeting held June 7th, 2017. Item E, resolution number 17-42, a resolution appointing members to the Delaware Northern New Community Authority and Delaware South New Community Authority and specifying the term of the appointments. Item F, resolution number 17-43, a resolution authorizing the city manager to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission Local Transportation Improvements Grant Program Round 32 and to execute contracts as required for the Winter Street and North Union Street resurfacing and Winter Street Bridge rehabilitation project. Item G, resolution number 17-44, resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a cooperation agreement with Delaware County for an application to the Ohio Public Works Commission for the Winter Street and North Union Street resurfacing and Winter Street Bridge rehabilitation project Round 32 application. Item H, resolution number 17-45, a resolution authorizing the city manager to submit an application for technical assistance through the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission Insight 2050 Technical Assistance Program. And item I, establish August 14th, 2017 at 7:20 p.m. as a date and time for a public hearing for ordinance number 17-54. An ordinance for Trade Plus Communities for approval of a rezoning amendment from B3 Community Business District to B3 PMU Community Business District with the Planned Mixed Use Overlay District for Burr Oak Commons containing 92 apartment units on approximately 20.06 acres located on the north side of State Route 37 just west of Westfield Shopping Center and just east of Lantern Chase Subdivision, and ordinance number 17-55, an ordinance for Trade Plus Communities for approval of conditional use permit allowing the placement of a PMU, Planned Mixed Use Overlay District for Burr Oak Commons containing 92 apartment units on approximately 20.06 acres located on the north side of State Route 37, just west of Westfield Shopping Center and just east of Lantern Chase Subdivision.
Very good. What is the wish of council on the consent agenda?
I would like to make a motion to remove items F and G from the consent agenda, please.
Okay. To be voted on separately, or what would you like?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So what is the wish of council on the consent agenda minus F and G? didn't sound good, F and G. Let me clarify that.
Approval of consent agenda minus F items E and F.
No,
F and G.
F and G,
G, I'm sorry.
Frank and George, right?
yes.
Okay. I was confused too.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Hellinger. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. And would you like to vote on the other two this evening now?
Well, yes,
What
I
is your
mean,
thoughts?
I think the reason for pulling those two items is I think they deserve a little discussion
Okay,
with regards to our funding mechanisms and where we're getting the monies for this and what that looks like with regards to our street and roads. So whether we do that at this point or we wait and pull that back in further down in the agenda, I have no preference. But I think it would be good to have Bill to provide some background.
Bill, would you like to discuss it now or later in the evening?
We've got a big crowd of other items, so why don't we move it to later?
Okay. All righty. Item 6 on the agenda is letters, petitions, or public comments. Is there anybody here tonight for something that is not on tonight's agenda that would like to come forward?
We're going to try to get some more chairs. If a couple of staff members could just check the closet here so we can set up some more chairs, please. And I think there are a couple of.
Yeah, there are a couple seats up front here.
Don't be bashful.
Good evening. For the record, if you'll give us your name and address.
Roger Cullum, 185 West Winter Street.
Can you pull the mic? Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Roger.
Better.
Got
Just
it.
pull it towards you.
You can pull the whole thing.
Yeah,
There you go. You got it. Do
Want the address again?
you have it, Elaine? Okay.
I just want to make comment on the halfway house, which has been approved for Washington Street, just south of Winter. This came as quite a surprise to the neighborhood. I've spoken with several of you up there, and Mr. Eflin. We're putting a business into that without a conditional use permit. And I know I've been told it's a zoning issue, but I would still like a more thorough understanding of how that business functions in the neighborhood. And I'd also like to approach council to ask them to review any future things that might happen. We have not found a single instance on the internet where a halfway house has increased property values. And that is quite a concern in the neighborhoods, particularly on Winter Street. So with that, again, I'd like to ask council to take a look at if it's zoning or conditional use, and would appreciate it if we didn't have another without some knowledge of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have somebody get back with you.
Yeah, we'll follow up.
Is there anyone here that would like, anyone else that would like to come forward at this time? Don't fight over it. Is this something that is not on tonight's agenda?
Absolutely.
Okay. See, you're wrong. Can I have your name and address for the record, please?
And Tyree, 345 Saratoga.
Okay.
I'd like to present a beautification project for the city of Delaware in washing the trees. And this is the literature will explain a little more. What we're proposing is to clean the trees with just basically a power washer, cleaning the fungus, mold, and spores, mildew off the tree, which I definitely feel would be advantageous to the tree's health, as well as aesthetically making the trees more pleasing to look at. Now, in Ohio, we have a lot of specimen trees here, and these specimen trees collect a lot of mildew, which obviously needs to be cleaned off. Now, if you were to look at the trees, pay close attention to the trees. The color that they are right now is not the color that they're supposed to be. They look absolutely beautiful once cleaned. And we've been cleaning these trees for about a year now, and there's no harm to the trees. And I think that they look beautiful, really. And I'd like to propose that for the city of Delaware.
Could we just clarify, are these the street trees that the city plants or all of the trees?
All the trees.
So not just street trees that are in the tree lawn, but if you have trees in your backyard?
Absolutely. All the trees.
Okay.
So you say you've been washing trees? Where have
Absolutely.
you? Could I drive past one that you've washed? I'm curious here now.
Absolutely.
Let's
Council.
go to my house.
Absolutely.
Okay, he's washed your trees, okay.
Absolutely, yeah. City of Springfield?
We've cleaned several trees for the city of Springfield. Our personal trees at our homes, we've cleaned. I have pictures. If you'd like to see pictures of these trees, and they look absolutely amazing after they're washed.
Oh.
And in thinking of it in terms of a biological sense, and getting the fungus and mold, insects out of the trees, they make the trees healthier.
And it's something you're proposing that we encourage residents to do or that the city would undertake?
Well, actually, we have a business doing this right now, and
Okay.
we would propose that. I mean, I would definitely want everyone to do it. If you can, if you have the tools to do it yourself, please. And it'll obviously generate more oxygen and absorb more of the chemicals that we put into the world on a daily basis.
Yeah, we're not soliciting anything.
Sure.
It's.
You'll have to give us your name and
Oh, I'm
address.
sorry.
That's
I'm
okay.
sorry, yeah.
You can speak.
I'm just here. I'm Ryan Boyle from Springfield, Ohio. I'm 3803 Upper Valley Pike.
Thank you. Well, we can have Ted Miller, who's our Park and Recreation, or Parks, contact you if you leave your contact information with Elaine. And then
Absolutely.
we can see what we can do to get these trees washed.
I was looking at the Shade Tree Commission and researching that a little bit. And it sounds like a program that they would definitely be
And they have a
Please hear
meeting
that.
coming up. We can-
tomorrow.
Yeah, and it's a
Excellent.
public meeting, so it'd make a lot of sense if you could attend that meeting and talk to them as well.
I'll see.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Washing trees. First for me. Okay, is there someone else that would like to speak at this time? Hi.
My name is Shannon Ruff, 248 Westwood Avenue, Delaware, Ohio.
Will you put a microphone in front of you, because everyone can hear you?
Yes.
Did you get her address?
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
I'm here to propose an anti-tethering law for Delaware City. Just a brief story. I moved back to Delaware. I lived here for many years, and then I was gone for a while, and I moved back in February. I noticed in my neighborhood there's an animal that is being chained up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I walk past the house when I walk my dog 4 times a day. Never seen anybody out there. I don't see, where the dog's getting any attention. It's in the doghouse most of the time, hardly ever outside. There's gravel outside the doghouse. There's stuff beside the doghouse that can get caught in. I know I called the Humane Society and they didn't have humane agents. I talked to a couple of my neighbors who have seen this dog for several years there. One person went over and saw in the dog will sell table scraps with maggots on it and sent a picture to the humane agent. They said that can happen very quickly and that there's nothing that they could do about it. I've been on a mission trying to get the humane officers. There's no humane officers and won't be for some time now, I guess. I called Delaware City Control. They went out and I was told that as long as the dog has food, shelter, and water, that there's nothing that they can do. So I have information from the Delaware City Attorney, what the laws are in Delaware, which seems pretty much next to nothing, food, water, and shelter. I've been online looking at everything that I can find. What I found is there's an Ohio Bill 94 that Representative Burns put into effect in 2015. It passed through the House, and from what I understand, the Senate has what they so called it. I read online, Columbus Dispatch said that, the Senate sometimes does that. So the law is not going anywhere, but it isn't, not going anywhere. So I also looked up, there's 13 other towns and cities in Ohio that have anti-tethering laws. There's also one county, Brunswick County, which has a no tethering law. I have the House bill and all the information that I would like you to look at. I'd like to propose an anti-tethering ordinance with the same specifications as House Bill 94.
Have you shared that information?
Yes, with Mr. Jones. I spoke with him.
Yes, I'm meeting with Shannon and Darren spoke, and I intend to introduce some legislation for a debate, and I hope we pass an ordinance on this matter before the summer's over. So I'm still doing some work with Darren and with Shannon's guidance.
I don't know if I need to do something further, if I need to get petitions or anything that I need to do, I'll do it.
Okay. Thanks for bringing this to our attention.
There are other states that have, Ohio doesn't, but there are other states that do.
There's about 23, I think, states that have the anti-tethering laws already. Do you want this?
You can just leave that with the clerk.
Is there anyone else that would like to come forward at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 8. And Warren Rose. Look at that smile. If you come forward.
Good, how are you? Thank you.
I have a proclamation for you. Whereas the City of Delaware has a responsibility to recognize occasions of outstanding significance, and whereas Warren Rose III of Troop number 318 has earned the rank of Eagle Scout, whereas the Eagle in our community and commitment to continue to develop leadership skills and to serve as a guide and role model for both communities and the community. Whereas Warren has been an active scout, demonstrating outstanding leadership and has contributed many service hours during his years of scouting. Whereas Warren earned numerous merit badges and completed a major community service project driven by his love of aviation and renovating a windsock and other improvements at the Delaware Municipal Airport Jim Moore Field. Now therefore I, Carolyn K. Riddle, the Mayor of the City of Delaware, do hereby issue this proclamation in honor of Warren Rose III in the City of Delaware, and am joined by my fellow citizens in extending the great pride, sincere congratulations to Warren for achieving this highest of scouting awards, and wish him much success in all future endeavors.
Well, scouting is very important, and just to kind of reiterate what a lot of people say, I believe every boy should go through scouting and every girl should go through Girl Scouts. It's a great program, and from my point of view, it's really grown me as a human being and as a person, and it's taught me many leadership skills and how to talk with people with issues and things like that. And after earning Eagle, it's kind of hard to stay within scouting a little bit because you have job, school, everything kind of gets a little more tough. But I like to stay active as much as I can, try to teach the younger scouts. Because when I was a younger scout, I always looked to those guys that loved me, and you're the coolest guys in the world, man. And you had to do everything. Start flying, shoot, whatever. It was awesome. So I just kind of take that into my part and try to give it back to the other guys who that's it. So that's kind of my goal as a scout, is always trying to give back.
Well, that's wonderful. Delaware's very proud to have someone like you, so thank you.
Thank you.
Eric, are you here? There you are. How are you? Fine. This year we weren't going to have the 4th of July parade because the group that did it last year decided not to. So we put it out on Waterville. And on Facebook, I started getting emails. So Eric stepped up to the plate, a bunch of volunteers, and made it a great parade. Huge success. I had so many people tell me how long it was. They were very impressed, and we put together in 4 or 5 weeks, I do believe. 3 or 4. You did a great job. But I'd like to recognize you, whereas the City of Delaware has a responsibility to recognize occasions of outstanding significance. And whereas the Delaware community each year comes together to enjoy July 4th parade with emphasis on our nation's patriotism, community pride, and community cooperation. Whereas the All-American Day in Delaware is an opportunity for residents to celebrate our country's birthday and tremendous freedom that we all enjoy. Whereas in less than 1 month, the 2017 July 4th parade was organized by Derek Forio and our resident-led Citizens for the 4th Committee, I like that name, who provided countless hours. And whereas the committee's efforts were of such great magnitude, it is fitting and proper that our city offers thanks to the civic remote. Now therefore I, Carolyn K. Riggle, the mayor of the City of Delaware, do hereby proclaim the honor of Eric Forio and the Citizens for the 4th in the City of Delaware, and share with my fellow citizens in offering our gratitude for the involvement in the city's 4th of July celebration. So thank you. Next, we have the Delaware General Health District, Sheila Hiddleston.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to speak. Sheila Hiddleston, your Health Commissioner, and I have Travis Irvin with you. He's our ranking epidemiologist. We actually have a new epidemiologist to be able to help to analyze all of the data that we get across our tables. And so now I have to call him the ranking epidemiologist. So we're here just to give a regular update to the things that are going on in our district, and that is not the building that we reside in, but the county that we serve, and Delaware City certainly is part of that. You have some packets in front of you that share a little bit of data about our Youth Risk Behavior Survey. That is a survey that we did with all of our school districts late last fall and early this year. That was for all middle school and all high school students. We actually had over 10,000 children respond. And it gives us some really, really valuable data that will help to inform our community health assessment, which will be starting later on this year with the other 2 populations that we hope to survey. We'll have the National Children's Survey, which will survey parents of children from birth through age 11. And there are 2 different cohorts there, birth to 6 and then 6 to 11. And then we'll also be doing our adult survey this later on. It's probably considered early fall, where we'll actually be doing the adult behavior risk survey. That's the CDC tool that we use regularly. You might remember that as an accredited health district, it's our responsibility to survey our community for the health, and then also to develop a community health improvement plan in coordination with all of our partners, of which certainly we consider the city to be. The adult survey, we're actually working right now on the questions for the adult survey, and we've been working with many of our community partners. We have the ability to add some questions that are very specific to our county and to the health issues that we perceive that might be. So it's a really good tool that we're able to use. So hopefully it'll be a great resource for us, and then we'll develop our next community health improvement plan. It wouldn't be the spring or the summer if I didn't talk about mosquitoes and ticks. So what I gave you was, we have tick cards that we're giving out at all of the fairs and all of the events that we go to. It's got the tips for what to do to check yourself for ticks, but it also has a really cool little notch on one end of it, and that's a tool that our staff developed. You can actually use that to remove the tick. You slide that little card under that tick, lift straight up, and it should pull the whole thing out for you. So we have these, again, we're giving those away at all of our venues that we are at. Throughout the summer, we'll have some out at the county fair. And then I gave you all a dump standing water. So as we think about mosquitoes, the very best thing that we can all do as a community is work together to get rid of that standing water. That is where mosquitoes breed. You should be receiving your Mosquito Monday update, and so you're getting those every other Monday, and it tells you about the traps that we've had, the mosquitoes we've collected, the types of mosquitoes we've collected, and also if we have any disease out there. So far, none of our pools of mosquitoes have been positive for West Nile virus, but we did just have our first human case of a mosquito-borne illness just this last week. We were notified, and that was a La Crosse encephalitis. So our staff did canvassing of the neighborhood, and we did do fogging last week for the area where this was identified. We also continue to follow anyone that is a suspect Zika case, of anyone that has traveled to an endemic area, not any locally transmitted. You might remember that the mosquito that primarily transmits Zika does not live in Ohio, and the secondary spreader we are now trapping for in some of our traps, and so far we have not identified any of those. So that's good news for us, although there is a worry that those mosquitoes will start to get a stronghold up here in our area, so that's why we're monitoring for that. So far our suspect Zikas have all come back negative, but we continue to work with families. And then the last thing I want to two last things. Travis is going to talk to you just a moment about our marijuana position paper from the board. I know that that's something that all cities and townships and villages now have to consider, is whether or not they're going to allow for the cultivation and the sale of medical marijuana in their area. And so we did bring you copies of the position paper that the Board of Health has. And then the last thing is, I know you've got many people here tonight that want to talk about your DORA. And we would just offer our assistance as you're doing planning for that. If you do decide to pass that, we have the Safe Communities Grant. That is one of the things that Jackie Bain, I'm sure many of you know Jackie, works with. And we have two issues that would be directly impacted by a DORA that we'd be happy to help you look at. Both the safety issues of the persons who might be drinking and wandering around, but also the access to alcohol to maybe some of the younger folks who should not be getting it. And if you look at the statistics on your youth behavior summary that I gave you, there are some there surrounding tobacco and alcohol for youth. I also would just offer to you, as far as the youth survey goes, if you all would like a more detailed presentation specifically about the data, we'd be happy to come and do that. We have about a 2.5-hour presentation we could do, but we've got it down to about 15 minutes, so we can just give you the highlights if that's something you'd be interested in. I don't know, Travis, do you have anything additional that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'll just say I come here about once a month, and I know there's been some open comments about the marijuana policy. It seems to be a hot topic right now. And I know you guys are not making a decision tonight or next week, but when the decision does need to be made, we would share our board's recommendation with you. We did make a position paper about marijuana. Specifically, it does advocate for the ban of retail sales locally. Something that you would have, another toolkit in your pocket for when that decision needs to be made.
And then if there's anything the council's working on that we can work on with you, we'd be delighted to do that.
Okay. Any questions? I have one, if you don't mind. So I tried desperately to dump the water. However, I have bird baths and I enjoy my birds having a bath. So I went ahead and bought these solar fountains that constantly are moving the water. But then do I have to worry about nighttime? Because the sun's not out and they're not going to work at night.
So with mosquitoes, and that's why I did bring you the dumping water, and I did forget to say one thing about that, so I'll say that in a moment. Every 7 days, you want to disrupt that whole water cycle.
Okay.
So even though you keep it moving, that does certainly help to keep those mosquito larvae, but if every 7 days you would dump it out and clean it, that's the best thing you can do. If you have a rain barrel, my husband has a rain barrel, he actually just bought the larvicide pellets that you can buy at many, many places and throws a few of those in there, however often it says you're supposed to do that. And then one of the things we've discovered, and you would have seen it probably if you saw your Mosquito Monday update yet, is we are doing surveillance to figure out where the standing water is in our community. And about 30% of the homes surveyed so far, it's flower pots. And you have to think about some of these mosquitoes can lay their larvae in like a pop cap. I guess beer really, because nobody probably has caps on bottles anymore. But that in that little tiny bit, teaspoon of water. And so it's important to really look around your property. We do offer for our political partners that will come out and larvicide and inspect and give you any recommendations for any of your properties. And this year and last year as well, we will also do that for our community. So if we have someone in the community that has a pond or something and they'd like us to come out and take a larvicide, as long as they give us permission to come onto their property, we'd be happy to take care of that. The dump standing water little stickers that I gave you are really to put, we're hoping people will put them on their trash cans. Now I know the city picks up all of our trash. I'm a city resident. We were hoping actually to get these put onto the tops of the trash so that when you take your trash out and then you take it to the road, you'd see that sign and say, oh yes, it's been 7 days, I need to dump my water. So I actually brought you a little stack, if you wouldn't mind, to maybe put those down with your utilities. And then I also brought you some additional mosquito-borne disease information, because truly as a community, we can do an awful lot to prevent those mosquitoes.
Okay. Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
What about the retention ponds? Are those a concern?
Most of the retention ponds have a fountain in them, and they're kept pretty well trimmed, but we do work with a lot of homeowners associations to larvicide for them. If they call us and ask us to, like I said, we're happy to do that. We actually have a really cool, it's kind of like a backpack sprayer that sprays these little pellets out, and that we're happy to do that for anyone. But a lot of the homeowners associations have asked us to do that for them. Once we get them on our list, we kind of keep them on our list and check them regularly.
Do we have any regulations in the city that require those? Because there's a pond
That require the
between
aerators.
Adelaide and the YMCA that has never had one, that gets complaints every year.
I have a comment. So with ponds, generally speaking, if there's waves, those larvae aren't going to survive. Picture like a snorkel is how the larvae breathe. So as long as there are waves, they're not going to be able to breathe. But in the ponds, there's always those outliers where there's like a little pocket or a puddle, and those are the areas that we'd be concerned about with
If you have
mosquitoes.
the fountain, that keeps them out of there. But if you've got, what are the two areas? Because we're happy to take a look.
It's the pond between the Adelaide Park subdivision and the Y.
Okay.
It's on Hauk Road.
Okay.
But that one is,
Yeah, that was prior to probably us making those requirements, but we can follow up with it.
Is that your property? It's not, so it would be the homeowners association?
Well, it's right now, it's the developer's responsibility, I believe. I think it's a little bit, 1,500 properties.
Is that somebody, Tom, that you could get?
Yeah, we
in touch
can
with
follow
and
up
ask
with
us?
you.
We'd be happy to go out and check it out and throw some larvicide in there. We've
Okay.
been working with a lot of our townships who are doing construction, because what we're finding is that there's a lot of ruts, and that's where the water tends to sit for more than the 7 days sometimes, so we've been working with a lot of them as well. But we're happy to take a look at that. And you said there was another one?
no, just that one.
Just that one? We're
Thank
happy
you.
to take a look at that.
I was just going to thank you as well for the presentation. Say you might want to stay for the next presentation. That's regarding climate change, and it's timely that you're here tonight. And
Actually,
they're
Mrs.
presenting.
Gamble actually came and gave a presentation to our board about the public health implications of climate change.
Heard it. Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have market-based plan for climate change. Mary Ann Gable and Citizens Climate Lobby.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor
We
Riggle.
can get a third chair if you want to come forward also.
Mayor Riggle, council people, Mr. Holman, thank you for having us here. I am Mary Ann Gable, and with me is Dr. Lori Anderson of Ohio Wesleyan University, and we are here for Citizens Climate Lobby.
Elaine, does she have to give her address?
No, 49 Forest Avenue.
But I do have the,
I'm at 316 North Sandusky Street.
Okay. Thank you.
We are the members of the Delaware chapter of the City Citizens Climate Lobby. There's some other chapter members here. We're all Delaware residents and your constituents. What is next? Yes, Citizens Climate Lobby is a nonprofit, nonpartisan grassroots advocacy group. Our mission is to build political will for a livable planet. We are focused on federal legislation to fight the present increasing threat and severe threat of climate change. We focus on national policies to dramatically reduce carbon emissions. We believe that citizens who are well-trained, organized by congressional district, and with a good system of support can influence political policies, and we as volunteers are trained and supported. We advocate for a carbon fee and dividend proposal, and that's what Lori will tell you about in a minute. We are national. We are international. We have 420 active chapters worldwide. That goes as far as Canada, Europe, Africa, Nepal, and Australia. This is a whole world effort, and we're all in it together. We have 56,000 supporters, and supporters located in all 435 congressional districts. 11 chapters. We have 11 chapters in Ohio, and Delaware was the third one to be founded. Who are all these people? One of them is me. Three others are Delaware residents that went to lobby on Capitol Hill on June 13th of this past year. Those are 950 people, citizen volunteers, who met with 500 congressional offices to talk about our efforts. We met with 15 out of 16 Ohio congressional offices and both senators' offices. We build relationships with Congress over time. We keep communicating. All of our relationships are respectful and appreciative. We appreciate what they do, and we get respect and appreciation back. It's a very good and beneficial and forward-moving dialogue that we have. I should say the heat was 95 degrees that day. So a lot of people want to know what we can do about climate change, and our answer is we have to have federal legislation. Council members, if you are concerned about this, and also people in the public, members of Congress want to know that you'll support them if they take action. That's very reasonable. There is a lot of movement in Congress toward addressing climate change. There's a group called the House Climate Solutions Caucus, which is exploring, just what it says, exploring solutions. You can only get in the caucus if you bring somebody from the other party with you. So there are now 46 members of the Climate Solutions Caucus, half Republican, half Democrat. Just in the last week or so, Representative Dave Joyce of Northeast Ohio has become a member of the Climate Solutions Caucus. We ask concerned citizens to contact Representative Tiber, who we've met with a number of times, and tell him you'll support him, you want effective action for climate change, and ask him to join the House Climate Solutions Caucus. Lori Anderson.
So Citizens Climate Lobby advocates for a very specific policy on climate. And this is called the Carbon Fee and Dividend Policy. And I'm going to explain how it works. The idea is that we place a fee on fossil fuels at the source. And that fee starts at $15 a ton. So the companies that are producing fossil fuels, whether it be at a coal mine, at a well, etc., are going to pay this fee. This fee will increase over time, so it will start at $15 a ton, and then it will increase by $10 a ton every year. So the price on carbon will go up over time. Now, this will obviously cause the price of goods made with fossil fuels or the fossil fuels themselves to increase in price, and that will be passed on to the consumer. So that creates a situation where people who use a lot of fossil fuels, citizens, would start paying more. To offset that, the second point of the carbon fee and dividend is to return the money that the fossil fuel companies pay as revenue to all households annually. So each household would get it, well, actually on a monthly basis. So each household would get a monthly check, which is coming from that pool of fees that have been collected from the fossil fuel companies. Now, a problem that that could create for business is that would increase the cost of our states because we have the carbon pricing. We address that with a border adjustment on goods that are imported from or exported to countries that do not have a price on carbon to equalize the price and make sure that our goods remain competitive. The whole point of this is to create a situation where renewable energy becomes much more competitively priced relative to fossil fuels. And the market will start to favor renewable energy and companies that use renewable energy and products made with renewable energy over those that use fossil fuels. And we're using the market to drive down the usage of fossil fuels and therefore drive down carbon emissions that cause all these problems with climate change. There are many supporters of this, and some of them come from angles that you might not expect. The World Bank and its carbon pricing panel, support the carbon fee and dividend approach. The International Monetary Fund supports this approach. The World Business Council for Sustainable Development and also the CEOs of major oil companies support the carbon fee and dividend approach. A lot of the reason for that is that this is actually more predictable and more under their own control than something like a top-down regulation. So they prefer it and are in support of this idea. Just to kind of summarize some of the things that make this a good solution, we've got a powerful market incentive for clean energy development. We're using the market to make renewable energy more competitive. It's technology neutral. We're not favoring solar or wind or hydropower or geothermal particularly. We're letting the market pick the winners in terms of which one is most competitively priced relative to the fossil fuels. It's transparent and predictable. That's a big plus for business. It's fair because we are pricing at the source of the fossil fuel and then spreading that cost throughout the economy rather than targeting, say, the transportation industry or something like that. And while fossil fuels get more expensive, we have to remember that we're not really paying the true cost of carbon right now. Carbon has big impacts on our health in terms of air quality. It really affects things like agriculture, a big business for our particular state and our area. It's going to have increasing costs in terms of creating a warmer climate that facilitates things like mosquitoes, weeds, pests. Those are going to become more of a problem for Ohio. So if we raise the price of carbon, we're actually seeing the true impacts on our environment, and that's what we're paying for. In terms of what it will do to, economically and so on, there's a group that's called the Regional Economic Modeling Group, Regional Economic Modeling Incorporated, or REMI, and they did a big modeling study looking at the impacts of implementing carbon fee and dividend. And the summary here is that we see improvements in emissions, we drive down emissions, our economy actually gets stronger, we see improvements in health, and we see improvements in household incomes. Specifically, the REMI study shows that under the carbon fee and dividend, we see a 31% decrease in emissions over 10 years and a 50% decrease within 20 years. And that's with our increasing price on carbon over time. We also have new job creation, significant new job creation over time. as the economy is stimulated by this dividend being returned to households. We see the GDP go up under this modeling scenario. And we also see lives saved in terms of reduced air pollution. For citizens of Delaware County, we might see an increase of $288 a month as they receive their monthly dividend, up to $396 a month as we increase over time the price on carbon. Oh, it's not, there we go. So we think that this is a good first step. We've got a strong economic argument. We've got job creation. We've got a stronger economy. We've got reduced emissions, and we've got life-saving changes in our air pollution. So what can you do as a city council? One thing we'd like to encourage you to think about is that a number of entities have been signing the We Are Still In declaration for the Paris Climate Agreement. Ohio Wesleyan has signed on to that. And you'd be joining, I have a quote here from their website, more than 2,200 leaders from city halls, state houses, boardrooms, college campuses, representing 127 million Americans and $6.2 trillion of the US economy. So there's a lot of entities that have been signing on to this pledge, and we'd like to encourage the City Council to think about that option. There's also an initiative called the Climate Mayor's Statement, which allows you as a municipality to adopt the Paris Climate Agreement goals. So we'd like to encourage you to think about that as well. And we think it's a great plan, and we'd like to just inform the City Council that Citizens Climate Lobby is working within your community, that we have a number of Delaware residents who've joined us in advocating for in this particular way, and we're pleased you want to know more about it.
Any questions?
I just have one. What is the, you show the revenue coming back to the households. What's expected to be, what's the outtake there from, how much is it expected that over 10 years, that household of four, how much is their monthly expenses going to rise due to, this manipulation of market prices?
Right. The whole point of having the dividend there is to try to protect low and middle income families from the impacts of the price rises that come with the carbon fee. And the REMI model estimates that 2/3 of families would end up with either breaking even or a gain in their household income based on estimates of how much fossil fuels they use and that type of thing. Okay. Now, I don't have an exact dollar figure, but the idea is that 2/3 of people would end up ahead or breaking even under this scenario.
Great, thank you.
I could also just add that anybody can, if you adjust your own carbon use, you do better. So there's a control over that. And the estimates that Lori talked about don't take into account the effect on health. So people could be much healthier and save money that way.
Great. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? All right, very informative. I will look into signing those with the mayor.
Thank you. We can help in any way.
You sent me the link, so I appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. That doesn't happen very often. Okay, we're going to jump down to item 10. I know we're late, but I know you're all here for the DORA discussion, but I thought you would all want to learn about the climate control first. So that's why we kind of did it that way. So Elaine, if you'll read item 10 in the agenda, or into the record, please.
Public discussion regarding a designated outdoor refreshment area, the DORA.
All right. Darren, do you want to start this discussion?
Well, I don't believe council's opportunity, except for Councilman Browning, has the opportunity to meet Chris Ballard in our office. Am I correct in that? I'd like to introduce him. He's our newest hire. He's in our prosecutor's office, but he also does work over at City Hall, working on several projects, and he helped work on the DORA materials and the research and things of that nature. So we were short on space, so I brought him up to the table with us, but this is Chris, everybody.
Hi, Chris. Welcome.
To recap to where we are at, we had some, and this is mostly for the benefit of everyone, we looked into possibly submitting an application for a DORA, which stands for Designated Outdoor Refreshment Area. We kind of got some big picture direction, went back to staff, went to the drawing board. I then came back and asked for some follow-up feedback to help us package which way we were going to go with it. We got that feedback and we had a package ready to go, but then we got some questions that maybe we wanted to get some more input before formally submitting any sort of application, because there are specific timelines and clocks that start ticking. And if we wanted to get more feedback from citizens, we didn't want to accidentally click that, start that clock ticking. So I guess we had this hearing scheduled in case the application would be going, but we decided not to make this a formal public hearing. This is more of a chance for the public to give us their opinions. Then council can give us direction, but no action can be taken until that application is submitted, and then there would be another formal public hearing. So no matter what happens tonight, there would be another noticed formal public hearing if we decide to proceed. Is that a good introduction?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Kelsey, I know you've been doing some work on this. Did you have anything to add before we start the discussion?
As a matter of fact, I do.
Okay.
Madam Mayor. Just to give you a little bit of background, my name is Kelsey Scott. I don't always come to these meetings. I was a little bit nervous. There's so many of you, but I kind of know a lot of you, so it's not as scary. My boss, Sean Hughes, Economic Development Director, wanted me to pass along a couple comments. He talked to the Economic Development Director of the City of Worthington, David McCorkle, to kind of get his feedback on how their DORA is working for them. So a couple comments that he wanted me to pass along are that Mr. McCorkle indicated that his law director researched the insurance issue and found that the liability for the use of alcohol and any issues stemming from that alcohol fall back to the licensed entity that originally sold the alcohol and not the event organization. They said that this is not the same as a nonprofit that applies for an F2 permit to sell alcohol at their event. Point number 2, he said that their first event, Picnic with a Partnership, which is their version of Main Street Delaware, went off without a hitch. Quote, he said that they discovered that less alcohol was consumed because last year the organization applied for an F2 permit and had a beer garden where people stayed and drank beer. This year, people strolled about and had a couple of drinks while they were walking, but didn't have a reason to stay in one place and drink the whole time. I guess they monitored the consumption through the use of the cups. Their police department actually sent half of their officers home because the event was so low-key. They did discover that retail sales went way up over last year because they actually allow people to walk into storefronts of people that, 1, don't have their own alcohol permits, and 2, agree to allow the alcohol to be consumed in their business. He said it's similar to firearms in that a business can say they will not individually allow firearms to enter their business. They do not need to allow alcohol, but he said most of them did. And then the last point that I have to share is the event sponsoring planning organization only needs to hold the typical event insurance they normally would if they were to have alcohol at the event from any other source, if they sold it or vendor sold it. This is only for events and not something they need to hold all year long. Thank you.
And I think I get it. Kelsey, mind if I jump in and expand a little bit on that? Kelsey talked about insurance twice, and that was because when we went over this with Main Street, they had some concerns as what the impact would be of having the ability for people to walk around with alcohol in the door on their insurance because they hold First Fridays. So the question was, is that going to mess with their insurance as an organization? And so they asked that we kind of slow things down until we get some answers on that, because this is new, we didn't know. So Kelsey was able to get some answers, at least from Worthington's perspective.
Okay. Any other comments from City Council?
Yes.
Okay.
What events are we looking at now?
Well, the Arts Festival has indicated they're not interested. And obviously Main Street's got a question regarding the liability issue. We've not heard, the car show is not interested in 17. It's kind of a moot point anyway. They'll have to evaluate it going forward for 2018.
The New Moon Half
Yeah, the New
Marathon,
Moon
they're
Half-
interested.
yeah.
So they're the only entity that's on right now.
And their events already happened this year, so it would be for
Right.
18.
Right.
I think the car show just wants to get their feet wet since this is their first year at it before they do anything else. Okay, any other questions for council? Okay, so raise your hand if you want to come forward and discuss this at this time. Yes, sir. Yes. And as you sit down, we will need your name and address for the record.
My name is Zane Grady. I live at 21 South Sandusky Street, apartment 36. My question is, very simply, if you're going to have people drinking and wandering around downtown, where exactly are they going to go? We have antique shops, bars, and restaurants. I don't think somebody working at one bar or restaurant wants someone coming in with a drink from another bar or restaurant. And most of the time when we have events going on, later in the evening, the antique shops are closed. So at this point, looking around, we have 19 places in downtown Delaware where you can buy beer, wine, excuse me, and stronger alcohol. We have more on the way. It bothers me a little bit that we live in a town, which I've only lived here about 1.5 years, but there are plenty of places where you can go and get beer, but Delaware could not support a single bookstore. What is the personality of Delaware? And because I live downtown, when the bars close up, I live right over here with the driveway that goes right alongside the building. 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I hear the drunks wandering down that alleyway. When the weather's nice, my window's open. I'm oftentimes awakened by them. It concerns me that if we have people walking around with beer all the time, is that going to create a better environment for the families and the people who live down here? Or are we just trying to make it possible for restaurants and bars that already have plenty of seating to make more money on people who are going to go in, buy a beer, and wander out? There is a measure of livability. Can you be comfortable living somewhere? Personally, I drink alcohol occasionally. I go to a number of the bars and restaurants here in town. I'll have 1 or 2 and go home. But we have a lot of people in our community who don't do that. And if we're going to create an environment where people are coming down to Delaware for Party Central, then tell the residents of Delaware, it'd be better if you don't live downtown. Anyway, thank you very much.
Let me explain something. When I first heard about DORA, the city of Delaware did not qualify. Then they opened it up and we do qualify per capita for our people. What we're looking for is special events only to do something. And yes, we do have a lot of restaurants and a lot of bars in town. We're not looking for someone to get drunk. That is not the idea. It's simply to have a drink and be able to walk outside when there's something going on. If you're lucky enough on a Friday night to get a seat on the patio, you're not getting up the whole night. So you're staying there. You're not going out seeing what else is going on. We're not encouraging anybody to get drunk. It will also have a time limit on it. So you just have to understand we don't benefit at all from this. I'm trying to do something that will enhance Delaware. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not here to argue with anybody. I just want to understand where we're coming from.
Right, I understand that, but
Okay.
one thing I would also like to point out, I lived in Worthington for a number of years. They don't have a college. We have a university here, and my question would be, you have oversight in the bar. If a bartender sells beer or anything else to an underage person, they are accountable for it. But what happens when you've got a graduate student goes in, buys a beer, goes out on the street and hands it to an undergraduate. Who's going to oversee that? Are we going to have police in front of every business? You know, we're talking about a fairly large area. And I was college age once. I know the ability to look at something and say, gee, I can figure out a way around this easily enough. And I, sad to say, looking at the things that happen around downtown Delaware after midnight, there are a lot of people who are not exercising good judgment.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to come forward at this time? Yes.
Hi, I am Lauren Eastham. I live at 204 Euclid Avenue. And I have to agree with the gentleman that was just here. We've lived here for 35 years, raised our kids here. One actually came back after college. Maybe the other will someday. But, you know, we have a great downtown, vibrant downtown. We've seen it come and go. Right now it's at a high point again, which is great to see. We do First Fridays. I can't imagine, personally, First Friday when everybody's walking around with their beer. We went to the zoo today. They're walking the zoo with the beer. Why do you need a beer for that? I have no problem sitting in the restaurant, sitting on the patios. Cities make concessions to allow the patios on the front sidewalks. You know, it's taken away some of the walkways, but. So, I made notes, so sorry, I already veered off of them. But I don't see any rationale really to letting people walking around town with it. They can be out with it, they can be on the patios, they can enjoy the weather, but I don't see the need for having them walking around. First Fridays draws families downtown. It's got booths with almost every church in town now. A whole lot of other organizations that bring their stuff to the booths that they have, and I just don't see the need to be walking around with a drink while you're enjoying the First Fridays with all the little kids that are there. I hadn't thought about the point that the gentleman brought up about passing it around to other people. I think there's a really good chance that people are going to do that. Through special events in the closed areas, I have no problem with that. It's been done in town and it seemed to work fine. I just don't think it's a problem to ask somebody to finish their drink before they go out to the street. So while it's beneficial maybe to some of the businesses, I just don't see it as beneficial to our community. So thank you for listening to me.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, dear restaurant owners and business owners in Delaware, Ohio, that I can see on my back. My name is Genti Kochi and my address is 18 South Sandusky. Can you please guess what my drink is tonight? I need a guess.
Coffee?
No. No. I drink bourbon. And this is my bourbon tonight. So who can tell me that this is legal or not illegal? How can you judge me tonight having a coffee cup or having a venti or a Trenta from Starbucks that can hold a whole bottle of wine and walking downtown Delaware? Please stopping and checking everybody's cups. Here, I have it. Nobody asked me tonight what I'm drinking. Here, this is my bourbon. Ladies and gentlemen, times have changed. I do believe and understand those people that have concerns, and I respect them. Who is checking you today going to Kroger or going to a gas station and buying a 24-pack of Bud Light and giving it to a 17 or 18-year-old kid? Who is checking on you? I do believe that a lot of people do not understand the DORA concept. So I strongly believe that we need to educate our community that it's not about drunk people. I promise you, we are not going to get more drunk people that we have tonight. There is a restaurant in town that does not serve alcohol, and they have more drunk people than everybody else. because they're open late for breakfast. Who is checking on those? There is a lot of miscommunication in this issue, and I do believe that we need to educate our neighbors, we need to educate our members of our community, because DORA is not going to be open till 2:30 in the morning for you to get drunk. At this point, I have a business in South Sandusky, and on Fridays and Saturdays, we are over capacity. And if I have somebody sitting on the patio drinking 1 beer or 2 beer all night, they don't want to move from the patio, which I don't blame them. They have the best seat in town. They're looking and checking the good weather, and I cannot blame them for moving. So what DORA is going to help, it's helping us because there are more our communities around us. As the lady before me talked, she was at the Columbus Zoo today and paying $10 for a Bud Light. We have people that have problems with alcohol, which I totally agree. But those people, in the same time, are sitting next to another table, because if I go to a restaurant, I do drink. And I too drink. So if I go to a restaurant, it does not matter which restaurant in Delaware, Ohio, and if you are next to my table, your kids are drinking milk, and they still see that I'm drinking a beer. So the issue that a few people think that they have seen people around town going on drinks, you don't know what it is in here if you don't show your kid how to cheat. Because probably your kids will think that this is coffee or milk if they never have seen alcohol in their life. We have churches in this town that do big events and they allow alcohol. We have big events in this town. I can apply tomorrow for an F2 and close the whole block and sell alcohol. We are not looking to get people drunk. We're just looking to make this place a better place. We're looking to make this place more acceptable and more people to come and visit us. Because Worthington, it's not far away from us. Marysville is not away for us. Marion is not away from us. Where I'm living at, they're going to put a huge crossing, Coughlin something, and they're going to have bigger patios and better parkings that are not away from us. So I do believe that Delaware is doing so well right now, but we need to keep it up. And this is one good opportunity to keep this place up. Thank you for your time.
Somebody else come forward?
My name is Deborah Gebert, and my address is 265 West Fountain Avenue here in Delaware. And I thank you for the opportunity again to address you on the issue of DORA. I think you know from before probably what my viewpoint is, but as it's still under consideration, I thought it was worthwhile to continue a little bit. I would like to mention a couple things that the City of Delaware officially basically advertises as a plus for Delaware, and I think most of us would agree. On your official website, it advertises a charming small town feel, which I think we all would like to continue. And another interesting fact, according to the 30th of June Delaware Gazette, apropos of its new logo and branding campaign, the communications manager of the Delaware County Commission, Jane Hawes, is quoted as saying, "What matters to residents is the quality of life, the small town culture." She goes on to state that we believe in nurturing public health and safety. And I think we heard a few things about that with the public health department here. So to add a little context, $45,000 was spent on this rebranding exercise, and that are some of the conclusions that they came to. So I would say we might want to consider then how this DORA, this Pandora's box or bottle initiative, will work in opposition to this traditional small town image that has been carefully cultivated here, and which is also, to my mind, the most attractive feature of our local community. So in opposition to the traditional family-oriented neighborhood, let us look at the entertainment district concept, which is apparently the raison d'etre for the DORA push, which aims to encourage higher and more public alcohol consumption. Okay, people are saying the aim isn't to get people drunk, and I'm sure that that is true, but the aim is to increase alcohol consumption, because otherwise there would be no reason to change the situation that we have now, because we certainly have plenty of opportunities here to drink alcohol. Actually, I was surprised by that 19 establishments figure that was mentioned earlier, where people can purchase alcohol. Now, I just want to, the Wall Street Journal had an article just last week, headlined, "Property Developers Push for Open Drinking on City Streets." So I thought this was quite relevant, not just going to pass it around so you all can see the picture that they illustrate it with, which is of a place in Iowa City, downtown district. Now, one of the reasons I'm passing out that picture is because if you look at it carefully, I would like to challenge anyone to find a family or even a child in that photograph, which is basically a crowd scene of people standing around drinking with red, I believe it's mostly red labeled red colored cups in their hands. So my point here is that if we're encouraging an entertainment type of district, we're encouraging probably quite a different thing from a small town family feel. To me, this looks more like college with a sort of party orientation. So I think we have to ask ourselves, would that type of party orientation be a sound basis for a stable family-oriented community development? And I think we heard already some of the results of over-drinking that the town already suffers from in terms of disruption to people who live here. And of course, the sad results for people who are unable to resist that next drink. And I quoted before when I was here, statistics in Ohio, the 1 in 5 Ohioans who struggle with alcohol abuse issues. And I think the Worthington example is interesting, partly because it has such a short life term so far. This has not been going on for very long, so really it doesn't offer a very useful comparison in terms of what could happen over a length of time. And I think anybody who's been to an established entertainment district will have a much better idea of what could be the result of that sort of thing. And in fact, what's probably more likely to be. And closer to home, we can look at the Short North, Victorian Village, places like that in the evening, especially on a weekend. And yes, you will certainly find buzz if that's what people are looking for. But I would suggest that in Delaware, that is really not the main desire of most local residents here. And I'd like to read something that I found for a similar town called Malden, 5 miles northwest of Boston, population 60,000, a little larger than ours. Median household income, 58,000. Interestingly enough, median house or condo value of 360,000. So property developers might want to think again, because what do they have to say in their statutes? They say, for the purpose of preserving the right to peaceful, quiet, and orderly enjoyment of public spaces to inhabitants of the city, the following activities are declared to create a public nuisance and are prohibited at all times. And that has to do with the drinking of alcohol in public places. So I hope that that is our aim, to preserve the right to peaceful, quiet, and orderly enjoyment of public spaces to all inhabitants of our city. There is nothing wrong with alcohol in itself, and I certainly enjoy a glass of wine occasionally myself, all things in moderation. But I think the idea that we can easily control it when we are out in public spaces, especially out on pavements or not in an establishment, I think that's kind of a bit illusory, because we've heard some of the possibilities that can happen already. And I had a woman who has been a bartender say to me, she said, they're not going to make any money off of it because people will actually bring alcohol in their cars and they will refill their glasses, you know, their cups up privately. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can go wrong with this. And I think that asking the police to try to monitor all this is something that's, I don't think we want to go there. I don't see that. So the question is, on which side do we in Delaware wish to be? Working to loosen the restraints that wise heads in the past have put in place to protect our communities, or on the side of deliberately removing those protections through public policy? And I hope you will make a thoughtful decision on that. So, thank you.
Is there someone else that would like to come forward at this time? Brian?
Brian Harpster, 1 North Sandusky Street. All right, so I've been taking a couple of notes. First of all, I'd like to correct Ginty. I think I have the best patio in town. So, secondly, there's been a lot of talk about increasing exposure to alcohol in the town, and that is, I don't think, the aim of DORA. The aim of DORA is to increase exposure of the town to responsible adults. And that's what we're talking about here. There's always going to be the outliers. There's people that are going to get hammered, and they're going to do it whether or not they can have a beer out on the street or not. It's not going to really make a difference. We heard already tonight from with Worthington, 1 year to 1 year comparison, having a beer garden versus not a beer garden, and being able to walk around and enjoy the town, that people drank less. I know when I go to towns where I can walk around, I drink significantly less than I do. It always amazes my wife. She tells me, bring $1,000, you're going to spend a lot of money on beer, and I don't. I don't spend anywhere near what I normally do if I'm sitting down and I have to save my seat or I enjoy the bar that I'm at, as opposed to walking around and checking things out, which we do a lot of times in Savannah, Georgia. I've always talked about what brought me to Delaware is how similar it is to Savannah, Georgia, an architect, in the friendliness of people and the responsibility of people in this town. Again, you always have those people that are outliers. But you look at Savannah and the rich history that it has and that it embraces, just like Delaware does. The other thing with Savannah, Georgia, it is open alcohol. It's year round. I know we're not trying to do that here. That's a huge step to take. But this is something that we can look at, that we can do an event or two and see what it does. Does it enrich it? It's the same hysteria over concealed carry. Everyone's going to be shooting each other in the streets, and blood's going to flow, and it doesn't happen. Ginty already, he came in drinking his whiskey today. So, the people that want to do that, that's their aim is to get drunk. They're going to do it regardless. Walking by your window at midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning when the bar's let out, that's going to happen, regardless of whether you can walk down the street or not. The question is, what do responsible people want? What are responsible people going to do? Responsible people are going to enjoy it. They're going to take that ability to enjoy that with their families and have a good time. I am a beer drinker. I have been for years. My kid's grown up around it. I have a great 24-year-old who's never been in any trouble whatsoever. I've got 2 younger kids that are doing fantastic, doing great in school. This belief that if we allow alcohol, the town is going to turn into a riot and alcohol is going to be flowing down the street, people passed out. It's not going to happen. As far as alcohol going into an establishment, you just don't allow alcohol in your establishment. First of all, it's against state law. So that's already taken care of. You cannot carry in alcohol from one place to another. So that's already taken care of by state law. Have I had that problem before? Yes, I've had people walk in. I've had somebody sit on my patio and they're drinking Mick Ultra or something like that. I don't sell Mick Ultra at my place, you know, a little bit higher scale beers than that. So, you know, I took the beer from him, explained to him that it was against the law for him to bring that onto our property. So is there going to be a learning curve? Yes, there's going to be somewhat of a learning curve. But the people I know that are for this, that want to enjoy it, everyone I know that's come to me with that has been a very responsible person. I've not had a single town drunk come and say, oh, I can't wait, because they don't care. They're going to get drunk anyhow. It doesn't matter to them. You look at possible things to do. I know a lot of people don't want to have Main Street's a little bit nervous about it. I can see that. I understand why. Car show didn't want to be the first to jump in with new people running it. I understand that. Arts Festival, they don't even like music, so of course they're not going to want alcohol. But moving this thing forward, we can look at other events that we haven't been able to do in town yet. Take a look at, has anybody like been to Germany and been to actual real Oktoberfest, where they have beer tents, where they have rides for kids, you know, and you're not walking around. We could have like a real awesome, not a Columbus Drunk Fest Oktoberfest, but like a real one in town here. We got rides for kids, we got areas for responsible adults to be, and everyone's having a great time. There's more that we can do with the town with this licensing, and it's going to bring people in from outside who want to just check it out and see what it's like. So that's all I really got to say. Thank you very much.
Is there someone else? Susie? I didn't say Chip, I said Susie.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So what started out as we thought was, Susie Bibler, Executive Director at Main Street, Delaware, 20 East Winter Street. And Chip Gregory.
Chip Gregory, 1929 Hyatt Road in Delaware. I'm the President of the Board of Directors, Main Street, Delaware.
Thank you.
What initially we thought would be a wonderful idea to bring to our events has become somewhat more of a discussion among our board. Something that we thought would be black and white has become somewhat gray to us. And so our board has not come up with a formal decision at this point. We are going to have a discussion with our downtown merchants and property owners and get more of an idea of their thoughts around it. Obviously, we heard from some of them this evening, but we would like to continue that discussion before having an official statement from our board. But with that, I'm going to pass it on to Chip Gregory.
Well, a couple of things that have come up for us. Our insurance person has talked about the increase in exposure, and we're concerned about that in this day and age of litigation and liability. We are truly concerned about being associated with an event and having that tagged to our organization. We've talked to several people in the downtown, business owners, and we see the benefit, the profit margin or the profit opportunity for businesses to be able to sell alcohol that goes out the door, and that could be tremendous for a Restoration Brewworks or a Buns or an OPA while they're packed on a busy Friday night. Excuse me. But we also see a tremendous liability in that. In a restaurant, it's within the four walls, and you have control of that alcohol, and when it goes out, you still have the liability of that alcohol, but not necessarily the control. So as Susie said, as a board, we have not made a formal decision. We see the benefits for the town. We see the benefits in events, but we can't necessarily make a decision at this time. We don't know that we have any events that we would apply for the DORA or ask to be part of with the DORA. But on the flip side, we could see an event coming into town, a moonlight run or something that could benefit from it. So with that being said, we need more education. We are trepidatious about it, and we want to learn more.
Okay, thank you. You're next, Joanne, after Pat. Pat, are you coming up front?
Yes.
Okay.
Since the microphone's this way. Patrick Bailey. I am a business owner at 11 West Winter Street. My concern, I'm going to be the devil's advocate, which is a role I seem to do in Delaware. I'm concerned about the family aspect of downtown Delaware. When I first came to town in 1980, I was directly across the street from this building at 20 South Sandusky Street. And to my dismay, I was selling records and cassettes and nothing else, t-shirts. To my dismay, for those first 3 years that I was on South Sandusky, we had children, teenagers, of course, which we're looking at, and junior high kids to buy tapes and things. They weren't allowed to come to our store. They were either forbidden to come to our store by their parents, or they were dropped off at our front door and they were forbidden to leave until their parents came back and got them. And the reason why is between the center block and where I was at 20 South Sandusky were 2 bars, 2, not 19. And both those bars, one has changed completely, complete different ownership, friends of mine. The other bar is long gone. But we had that issue, and I had no idea that I was going to have that issue. I wanted to be on the South Block at the time because I wanted to be accessible to Ohio Wesleyan students and downtown Delaware. In 1984, the opportunity came up for me to move to the center block, and we moved exactly the same number, so exactly 100 feet on the center block, and we were 100 feet on the South Block. Our business went up 30% within 60 days, and it was almost all teenagers that were not allowed to come before. And I'm talking older teenagers too that would have gotten in trouble. So they were going someplace else to buy a record. They would go to Columbus, or they would go to one of the department stores on the outside of town. Our business increased dramatically when suddenly we weren't next to the bars. Now we're surrounded by the bars. I will be one of the businesses that will speak up to Main Street program that I do not want to see this program, this DORA program, involved with the First Friday events. The First Friday events in my last 7 years have been pushed as family affairs. And there's lots of children, lots of parents with children in strollers. It's supposed to be a safe, healthy environment, and there's supposed to be children's activities going on at all times. If that gets taken away, I think it's going to have an adverse effect, at least on the First Fridays. On special events, we've heard tonight about responsible adults will come to downtown Delaware. Well, the future is not responsible adults. The future is children getting used to coming to downtown Delaware, getting used to the Delaware aspect at large, rather than just going to Amazon to buy whatever they want, to get into the shopping and to feel safe about it, and their parents know that they're downtown and that everything's okay. I'm worried about that aspect. And then the other thing is, so you have your beer in your hand or your drink, you leave wherever you bought it, and you walk to your car. So now you can drink right to the door of your car. Are these responsible adults, when they get to their car and they still have a half a cup, going to pour it on the ground? Or do they get in their car? And then we've got that liability, drinking and driving in downtown Delaware, which is already a dangerous situation with half these lights. People are making U-turns on double striped roads hourly. And there's U-turns, there's left-hand turns on red lights, there's right-hand turns with no stopping whatsoever at red lights. And we're going to add that you can take your drink right to your car door, whether it's at midnight or 10 o'clock or 8 o'clock, whatever event, is there a border patrol inside this that stops people from going to their car that's on Franklin Street carrying their alcoholic beverages? And how could there be a border patrol? I mean, you're talking having a police officer at every single intersection during these events. That's all I have to say. I'm just, those are my concerns, and those are the concerns I'm going to bring up with Main Street as a business. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanne?
I'm Joanne Meyer. I live at 170 Wagner Way. I'm here. I do own a business within the affected area, but it is one of those restaurants that has to deal with the alcohol issues that comes with the license all the time. So I'm not real worried about all of that because my staff and I were trained to handle with those situations. I'm here to speak on behalf of those special events. For 15 years, I organized Jeff Jam, which was a music festival on South Sandusky Street. We raised over $100,000 in that time period to help pay for scholarships for students and for scholarships to colleges. We've paid for instruments, we've paid for lessons. But one of the things that I always said that I would not do is if I couldn't raise enough sponsorship money prior to the event to pay for the cost for that day, we couldn't hold that event because, you know, if we had monsoon like we did the last 2 days, the event would be canceled. And if I didn't have everything paid for, then the money would come out of the scholarship fund. And I was never willing to do that. We haven't been able to have it the last 2 years, and we tried really hard to bring it back this year. But with the costs and the way the system is currently set up, we couldn't come up with the sponsorship money to do it. The way the current system is set up, you know, we had fencing and, you know, the liquor liability, obviously, you would still need to do that. But there's a lot of other factors that go involved with it. To me, the DORA, especially because we're looking at just special events at this point, is a way to have a unified system so that we could bring some special events to our downtown. In the 15 years that we did it, we had, I remember one incident with a person who had had a little bit too much to drink, and they were immediately escorted by the police officers, and the situation was handled. So for the amount of people, the amount of event over a 15-year period of time to have, I don't see it as a big party zone or anything like that. It's people gathering to have a beverage outside and enjoying fellowship, and there was always a lot of kids there dancing in the streets. It didn't seem to be a situation where there was, you can't be a family affair or you can't have this, it blended very well together. So I hope you bring it back because I would love to do Jeff Jam again because I think having the overall outer layer of it would help alleviate a lot of those expenses with the way the system currently set up. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Tracy Payton, Managing Director, Strand Theater, 28 East Winter. I really don't want to sway the committee one way or another, but I just want to bring up some thoughts. About the party orientation in a college town. I lived and worked in Dayton, Ohio, and the things that people are afraid of happening with the alcohol being passed around, that's already happening. That's nothing new. the comment was brought up about people bringing alcohol to their cars and going back and forth. That's already happening, nothing new. There was a book several years ago called Rise of the Creative Class by Richard Florida, and it is studied in universities around the country. And what that talks about is the successful downtowns. Successful downtowns are based on the arts and entertainment district and also the culture. I really think no one's really talked about that. And from the Strand Theater, I think that it's really important to consider that if you go to the Strand Theater, especially during kid shows that are held at 11 in the morning, lots of parents get alcohol. That's something that probably no one knows that I see every Tuesday at 11 in the morning on a weekday. Just something that I wanted to bring up. But you know, I don't know how long the Main Street program has been in effect, but I'm sure we had similar meetings and conversations about whether or not to pursue with that before it started, much like we're doing now. And the different Main Street programs around the state and around the country are different. The First Fridays in particular are different than our First Fridays here. Many of them have alcohol. Many of them are successful. Many of them are in bigger cities. Certainly there are those that are not successful and have lots of problems that go with it. But I think that from the entertainment part of it, I think it's only fair that we give it a chance to see how it works. I mean, if you do it for 1 year, it doesn't mean you have to stick with it. And certainly with Delaware being such a destination in terms of its restaurants and Veritas, I think this could be the potential next step. I think the concerns that people have brought up about alcohol at family events, that is, you know, that's a valid concern. But I also think that without change, there is no growth. And if we want to continue to be a destination, especially the way that Delaware is advertised as a food and beverage, you know, place to go, and we've got 3 or 4 new restaurants coming in, it's worth more exploration, in my opinion.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Your hand up went first. We're here. You're next. Sorry.
Hi there, my name is Bill Gropper. I live at 284 Indigo Blue Street, and I own a business here in Delaware at 28B South Sandusky, a non-alcohol serving business. We'll start there. Just a couple of perspectives. I think first off, heard some folks talk about kind of the reason for this project. This is clearly not about allowing people to drink more. It's about bringing more people to downtown. And as a business owner and someone who lives in Delaware, a couple of things I've been thinking about. First is we are competing with cities all around us to bring people here. And if other cities are beginning to become more attractive, we will lose those folks. And when I think about some of the events, special events that are in place today, I wonder what they would look like if another 500 or 1,000 people were to show up. I think it would change the quantity and quality of vendors who show up. I think it would change the number of people come exponentially over time because it become that destination. So when I think about what's going on here, it's really about making it more attractive. There's been a lot of talk about liability. All the liabilities that have been discussed today are controlled by the laws that are already in place. So for us to sit here today and say it would increase liability, those laws are already in place to stop those issues, and I have full faith and confidence in our ability as a community to enforce laws. We do it well today. I don't think that would change. And then the last piece I've heard a lot of people talk about today is around community standards and how they feel about children being exposed to this. My first thought is I have an 11-year-old. I take her to football games, baseball games, church fairs, all of which serve alcohol. Epcot Center at Disney World. Baby strollers and people where you can walk around the world and drink at every part of the world. That doesn't change. You don't see an issue there. So I know there's fear, but I think it's fear because it hasn't happened and we haven't seen what it could do, and the unknown is scary. But I think there are lots of examples of how this works if managed properly, and it feels like it's the right place to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Yes.
My name is Philip Loudon. I live at 160 Curly Smart Circle. I'm the pastor at Asbury United Methodist Church. I've lived here 10 years. We are well aware of the heroin epidemic in this community and others in Ohio, and as terrible as that is, it often overshadows an ongoing problem with alcohol abuse. And one can read in the police report every day in Delaware that there's been ongoing issues with that. Although it's true we cannot prevent people from making bad decisions, we don't want to have a public policy that makes it easier for them to make bad decisions. We want public policies that help them make healthy choices and encourage that. And we also don't want to make our law enforcement agencies' job harder. We want to make their job simpler and not make it more complicated. So I think those are concerns that we ought to be thoughtful of. And I guess the bottom line for me, and I think for many people, is that does this make our community a better place if we would make this adoption? I don't see how it does. And I would encourage council to not continue with this.
Yes, sir.
Hi, David Weiser, 7 Marvin Lane here in Delaware. My partner Jim Halter and I own a bar at 40 South Sandusky Street. I liked Ms. Meyer's comments in reference to Jeff's Jam, because I've watched that event and other events over the years at beer gardens. And to be honest with you, I think the events would be a whole lot better without the fence, all the fence keeping people from being able to move around. I don't think there would be a lot, if any, more liability on the police trying to control that. And I say that because I think the event would be better, but I still have some concerns because we keep talking about the liability, and we have trouble every year getting some kind of reasonable insurance for a bar. And I do have a concern with the people that would be walking around, and you're talking about the cups, and then trying to come into my establishment when I really can't allow them to bring in alcohol. So I have a concern with that. But I guess with all that being said, my partner and I are willing to try anything if the city decides that they want something like that, because I think for certain events, I really think they would operate more smoothly than what they have in the past. Because one of our concerns in the past was after they had to fence in areas to make sure people didn't get out with a beer, but then people had trouble even getting to my establishment. So in certain situations, well, it didn't help me at all, even though they had an event with a lot of people. So I guess I'm kind of 50-50 on it, because I know there will be some things we would have to deal with, because trying to explain to somebody when they're buying a drink, leaving an establishment, walking around on the street, and then they try to come in my place, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, you can't bring the alcohol in here. there's going to be a learning curve for all of us, and we would deal with that. I mean, it's no different than when people try to bring in stuff in a backpack because they think it's okay to bring it in and drink it in my place, which it's not. It's against the law. But I would just encourage everybody to look at it and not move too quickly, but look at it because I can see a lot of advantages to it. But I think we'd all be kidding ourselves if we don't think that there's going to be a real learning curve if we were to do something like this. So, thank you.
My name is Jim Halder. I live at 1805 Castleton Way, Delaware, Ohio. I am Dave's partner in Clancy's Pub down here. They talk about all the problems we're going to have with open containers on 3 or 4 or 5 events. One event would be 12 times a year. I sat on city council when they wanted to first started talking about doing patios. And oh my Lord, we couldn't have that. Everybody was going to be out there just drunk, throwing stuff. All kinds of problems are going to happen. They didn't happen. County Fair wanted to sell alcohol up there and beer at the fairgrounds. Oh my goodness, it's the end of the Delaware County Fair. All those drunks are going to be coming across where the kids are in the playgrounds and everything else. Didn't happen. Ohio State sells beer at Ohio State football games. Okay. Oh, that was going to be the end of it. It didn't happen. I'll tell you why it doesn't happen. Because in this town and many of those others, we have business people who own bars and liquor establishments who really do a great job in running their bars. They make sure they're not serving underage. If a person's had too much, they tell them to leave. If they need to, they'll call a cab for them. In some cases, we've paid for the cab to send them home. If they come in, they've had too much, we won't serve them. And I'm going to tell you what, every single bar up and down the street is exactly the same way. These are people who invested a lot of money in their businesses. All right. So I think to categorize them as the liquor is going to cause a problem, it's not the liquor is going to cause a problem. It really won't. You're already going to limit the amount of days and hours, I understand. Is that correct? So you're not starting it at 8 o'clock in the morning and going till 2:30 at night. And those same people that, are they going to drink a beer going to their car? What's the difference whether they're drinking a beer going to their car or they finish a beer in my establishment or any other establishment and walk to their car? They're in the same shape. So I think, we're just, a lot of this is, it's going to be a big problem. Even if it did, you could stop it. Whatever you pass, you can unpass. If you want to increase it, you can increase it. If you want to decrease it, you can decrease it. That's the wonderful part about this whole thing, okay, if it becomes a problem. I don't think it will. I think the people in Delaware and the business people in Delaware and the people that put on the First Friday and that did the Jeff's Jam and the car shows, although they're not particularly wanted. And if I was running a car show, I wouldn't either. I think they're going to do it the way it's supposed to be done. Hasn't been a problem. Why is it a problem now? You're not going to sell any more liquor. In fact, you're going to sell less because they're going to be walking down the street. That's all I have to add.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Okay. I thank you all very much for coming this evening so we could hear all sides of the story, everything you're thinking. You have to understand that when we first started talking about this, we as council, we don't benefit from this. We were just looking at a way to enhance Delaware one more time. So we'll take it back, we'll discuss it some more, and we'll see what happens. So I think we're going to take a short break, 5-minute break, and thank you.
Carolyn, are we going to
We're going to call this city council meeting back to order.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Lee, we're going to jump back up to item 9. Poor Greta Gouda. I know, I feel bad, but it's okay. Okay, can you read the agenda? Okay.
Item A, Greater Gouda LLC, doing business as Greater Gouda, 12 North Sandusky Street, Delaware, Ohio, 43015, permit class C2.
Thank you. Do you have a report?
Madam Mayor, members of council, Captain Adam Moore with representing the City Police Department tonight. In late June, we were noticed, the city and the police department, by the Division of Liquor Control, that the Greater Gouda had requested, by way of the business owner applicant, Mr. Smiles, to have a C2 liquor permit issued, which would permit the selling of sealed wine and mixed beverages for carry-out only. We assigned that to a detective, conducted a background investigation based on the standard criteria that we do typically in these cases. And at the conclusion of that background, we did not find that there's a legislative basis to request a hearing to object to the issuance of this liquor permit for this business. And I also believe Mr. Smiles is with us tonight. So.
Is this to carry it out in a paper cup? Just kidding.
Sealed containers,
Thank
Madam
you.
Mayor.
Okay, what is the wish of council?
I move for approval of the liquor permit.
Thank you.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Keller, a second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Sorry, made you sit through that. And at this time, we're going to move back up into the consent agenda for F and G. Hear this, Bill?
Yeah.
No, there he is.
So I believe Councilman Hellinger had requested these 2 items to be pulled off the consent agenda, just so that there could be just some brief discussion or an overview of this this item, which is really to apply for a grant through the Ohio Public Works Commission for dollars to assist in a repaving program. We do this annually, and this is one of the programs, this is one of the local road improvement programs that we depend on for our resurfacing needs. I don't know, Councilman Hellinger, if there was anything else you wanted to add or anything from Mr. Farino, but it's an important part of the program.
Yes, exactly. And I think members of our community, obviously we've tried to educate members of our community about why our roads are in the shape they're in and why we may not have the monies to affect some of these various projects. And in my conversations with various people around the city, you know, I think we just need to do some more education and get more information out with regards to where these different third-party monies are coming from and how much monies the city themselves have invested in some of these programs, and why then we just can't go out and resurface all of the control this year. So really, I mean, I would just like to hear Bill explain a little bit of the costs here on these projects, and then that distribution and what that is kind of the overall pie for 2017.
Sure. I'll just provide some facts. I think we're all familiar with the Ohio Public Works Commission program. It's been our mainstay of our paving program for the better part, well over a decade, maybe even back 15 years. Our travel collectors are great candidate projects through this program because they have enough traffic to warrant those types of grants being spent on them. Ohio Public Works Commission funds don't score well for like cul-de-sacs or lightly traveled roads because you're not getting good return on investment. So we've always applied for our arterials and collector roads and have been successful every year in order to get these funds. We were around the $300,000 to $350,000 requests. Our request has been $450,000 for the past few years, and that's also matched by $50,000 from the county, and that's the second piece of legislation that accompanies this, a cooperation agreement. Money augmented with our local dollars, and it's typically about 50%, 50-50, so another $400,000 or $500,000 of local dollars goes into that in order to do around $1 million or so of resurfacing work, and it's typically on our collector and arterial roads. Again, we need to put the money into those large roads in order to get the grants. That is also the bulk of our resurfacing program and has been. We do some community development block grant streets, some local streets with those funds in the LMI areas. But by far and large, this represents well over 90% of our resurfacing effort annually. And it has for a long time. So that's what that money is there for, and we are eligible our roads are eligible for that. There's other projects we could do under these applications, utility projects, stormwater projects. We have in the past applied for those, but this goes back, well over 15 years. For the most part, we've been strictly asking for resurfacing. It has helped our arterials and our collector streets stay declining at a slower rate than our local roads because we have been able to put $1 million or so, or equivalent in today's dollars, into those streets. It's still not to that $1.3, $1.4 million per year we should be putting into just our main roads, our arterials, not including what we need to put into our local street. But it's allowed our most important streets, like the ones on here tonight, Winter Street through downtown, Union, which will take it all the way up where it curves and becomes Hefner, to Sandusky Street. Those are important routes with a lot of traffic, and it lets us maintain those routes. Other streets coming up our roads like Houck Road can be resurfaced. London Road this year will be resurfaced. Glen Road, which if you've been on Glen Road on the south side, parts of that road almost 10 years old, and already the pavement is in a condition where it's going to need attention here in the next few years. Those are the type of roads we can put it towards. So that's where the Ohio Public Works Commission applications are really important to us. They've allowed us to have a significant resurfacing program. If we didn't receive that money, then our resurfacing program could drop back to what our contribution is, which would be about a $500,000 program. And we wouldn't receive the $50,000 county contribution either. So we could opt to do that, but our philosophy, our program has been to focus on these large arterial roads because they carry the most traffic and they deteriorate at a much faster rate than the local roads do. So we've been doing a fairly good job at trying to maintain the overall level of service and pavement grade on those. Regarding the larger issue of where we are with our pavement program, I provided the city manager with an annual update of our pavement resurfacing program and our associated maintenance programs, which is guardrail, lighting, signage, striping, those things. And with the intention of that information will get to you. And so you have an update of the state of our pavement, if you want to call it that in the city. Shows you how fast our pavement inventory continues to grow and how our rating continues to drop, what that means in dollars and cents, where we need to be. Unfortunately, the levy on the first try didn't pass. The issue is just as important today as it was a year ago. I would say it's more important. For example, the subdivision on the south side of Cheshire Road that we're getting ready to approve, that'll add nearly 5 miles of road into the city inventory in one subdivision. It's 5 more miles of road we have to pave, and the cost per mile is over $300,000 right now to repave that road. So we're putting a significant amount, we're requiring about $15,000 per mile of pavement that we add. We need to increase our funding to be able to take care of that one piece of road. And we're adding more over mile road, a couple miles a year through subdivision growth. But our revenues are absolutely flat on that. That's how significant the levy issue was. But the information that I've packaged and Tom has right now to review really summarizes the need, again, where we were in terms of our pavement and our pavement-related programs. There's just need and all the way around it's still there. So in order to stay focused on the payment, we just continue on this OPWC program because it has been good to the city. We have been very successful receiving these grants, and we'll continue on that effort. And it doesn't take away at all the need to address the larger picture of the resurfacing. We have less than half the dollars really needed to have a full resurfacing program, and we also have a fairly significant deficit in the other programs: guardrail expansion, new sidewalk infills, street lighting, signage, striping, and the similar projects. If that gives you a little bit of background of where we are tonight. This legislation is, it's a little time sensitive in that we still have to go to the county. They have to approve agreements as well. We package it all and have it ready by September for submission. And these particular roads in this project, which is North Union Street and Winter Street, and I should also mention the Winter Street Bridge has issues that we've had uncovered in our various bridge inspections over the past several years, has issues that we really have to address, mostly involving the substructure of the abutments with missing block and stone underneath. We have to get fixed. So the grant will also help cover those costs as well. So that's the program for this year. We have a 5-year program for our larger collectors and arterials that we're putting together. I think you've seen a lot of that before, but we do, depending on the condition of the road, do move roads around in that to where the greater is. And we actually have 2 programs. One, assuming we had additional funds to be able to do more local streets, and then a more realistic one actually that just has us doing the large arterials and collectors, and then the community development block grant roads, and really doesn't have any significant funding for local streets. So that information we'll have more discussion on, I'm assuming, as we go into the CIP review here over the next several weeks. We're going to have some in-depth discussions about those. But for purposes of tonight, we're focusing basically on getting this OPWC program going forward. In terms of what does it limit us to, in order to fund this project, we are taking $420,000 of local funds and putting it towards this particular project. And every subsequent year, we apply for OPWC funds. It's a similar amount of money, $450,000 of local funds. We're putting it to meet our match on these large programs. It's still resurfacing, and it's resurfacing of our important roads, but it does tie those funds up for that particular type of project.
And I guess just building on that, you're going to be acting on 2 resolutions tonight regarding the Point project. And our local obligation on that is approximately $6.1 million. So those local dollars have to come from somewhere. So it's projects, it possibly could eat into what we're using as our local match for these other projects. That's what we'll be talking about as part of the capital improvement program. But that's, that was a discussion we had with the community. We still need to have it with the community, and that's probably one of the reasons that Councilman Hellinger wanted us to have a discussion, have this off the agenda, as a separate item tonight.
Okay, any questions?
We're still recommending favorable action this evening, with which ahead of you, I think it was just.
Okay. So would council like to vote on items F, A, and G in the consent agenda at this point?
I think there's two separate actions.
I'll just move the approval of resolution 17-43.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Hellinger. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller? Yes. Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move for approval of resolution 17-44.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Hellinger. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Thank you. We'll jump on down to item 11, which is consideration of resolution number 17-46, a resolution adopting the renaming of East Side Park to Bennett Park.
Madam Mayor and City Council, this item came to us last year when Mr. Yankee wanted to honor Mr. Richard Bennett on the East Side Park. We didn't have a naming policy in place at that time, and since then we do have one in place. And Mr. Yankee has submitted per the policy we have in place. He submitted the documents. Also, the family has submitted, approval of this process. And right now, today, I think Mr. Yankee's here, Sheriff Russ Martin, and one of the sons of Mr. Bennett is also here. So Parks Board recommended approval of this last month, and we recommend approval of this tonight too. I think they also might want to say a few words tonight too.
You've had a full agenda tonight, so I'll move quickly.
Okay.
It's a privilege to be back in front of this council again after many years of serving as chief, but I have to admit, it's a little melancholy not seeing Joe DiGenova over there, Mr. Jones. I want to thank Mr. Miller for his continued diligence in driving this forward. It's been a pleasure working with him, and Chief Deputy Pat Yankee, former captain of the Delaware City Police Department, have worked hard to submit the necessary paperwork. I've watched with interest as your current chief of police has been intentional about his outreach into the community and his initiatives, community policing at its finest. But I will tell you, the reason we're here tonight is because before we had a term for it, community policing, Dick Bennett was living it. I shared with the Parks Board a couple weeks ago that I had the privilege of spending a breakfast with a gentleman from Philadelphia, an African-American fellow, and he stated one of the reasons that there's a disconnect between law enforcement and our neighborhoods is because oftentimes the police would move out of the neighborhoods as their wages increased and left behind that void. Dick Bennett, Patrolman Dick Bennett, lived on the east side of Delaware. He served on the east side of Delaware the entire time he was with the Delaware City Police Department. And with us tonight is former Chief Randy Martz, and as I stated before, Pat Yankee. We were all beneficiaries of Dick Bennett's attitude toward community policing. He modeled it in the fact that the East Side Park was across the street from him. His patio overlooked that park. And in many neighborhoods where people complain about the noise from children, Dick welcomed those kids to that neighborhood, turned the shovel himself to improve that neighborhood, and working hard to create the park that's over there now and the ball field. Dick also served a community in leadership role for Boy Scouts, and just as importantly with the military, and then eventually with the Veterans Services here in Delaware County. We think that it's a great opportunity to honor the legacy and service of Richard Bennett by naming that park after him. And I will tell you that after the last encouraging Parks Board meeting, we optimistically talked in the outside here with both of Dick's boys, Aaron and Sean, and Sean is here tonight. And we were talking about what that park might be named. And as I mentioned, Patrolman or Officer Richard Bennett, I was encouraged to hear both boys say, we ought to just call it Bennett Park because Mom, Carol, was always a supporter of Dad, Dick. So I'm here to tell you this is a love story, really. A love of community, a love of public service, and ultimately the love of a couple who took care of each other in their final days. And I don't think the city would do anything better but to honor the legacy of Richard Bennett by naming that East Side Park, Bennett Park. Sean's here, he's traveled, and I think it would benefit just to hear briefly from him to talk about his dad's legacy and impact.
Thank you.
Good evening. I really appreciate you taking your time to consider
Can I
this.
stop you for 1 second just to give us your name and
I'm
address?
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sean Bennett, and I live at 5383 Lewis Avenue in Toledo, Ohio, lot 139. Dad really did love Delaware. Dad loved serving people. In the Air Force, when he came back to Delaware as a police officer, and then as Veterans Service Officer for Delaware County until he retired to take care of my mother. Mom and Dad did love kids. Their house was a safe house in our neighborhood. Everybody in our neighborhood knew that they could come to our house if there was any issues. It was probably the hangout place for most of our friends growing up, for good or bad. But Mom and Dad just loved having kids around. And Dad in the group that they put together to get the empty field that used to be next door that kids played in for who knows how long before we were old enough, to get that organized into a park. I remember as a little kid getting the old park equipment that had retired other parks and brushing them off, repainting them, the old spring toys, that's what we had. And it's blossomed into what it is now. And it's a beautiful park, and it gets a lot of good use. So we've had a lot of good family memories over there. The last time we were able to meet as a family was 2011 over there for my youngest daughter's graduation from high school. She just got married 2 days ago. So anyway, a lot of good memories there, and a lot of good memories with my mom and dad both, and the support that she gave him and everything that he did, and the fact that he did love the east side of town. We lived there my whole life until I went to school, and came back briefly, moved to Toledo, sorry. Delaware will always be my home, though. Just honored that this is even being considered, and I thank all these guys here that have made this happen. When they approached us, Aaron and I were kind of like, wow. And my brother Chris would say the same thing. Chris lives in Cleveland, and both him and Aaron had other engagements that took them away work-wise, so they couldn't be here tonight. But I just wanted to say thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for making the trip down here. Thanks. What is the wish of council? Who wants to make the motion?
Move for approval of Resolution 17-46.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Keller, a second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. We have a vetted park. Thank you for all your work on this one. Thank you very much. Okay, let's go ahead and do committee reports. Mr. Jones, do you have anything to report on?
I have none tonight.
Mrs. Keller?
I have like 10. No,
Right.
just kidding. None.
None.
Mr. Rohr?
Nothing.
Mr. Hellinger?
Nothing.
Okay, that was easy. Okay, so let's item 12. Consideration of resolution 17-47.
Resolution number 17-47, a resolution authorizing the city manager to sign and enter into an intergovernmental agreement with the Delaware County Commissioners for Indigent Defense Services for municipal code violations.
Mr. Schulman?
I would say it's that time of year again, but it's actually earlier than we've done it in the past. But Madam Mayor, members of council, this is an agreement that we have to do based on the Ohio Public Defender's Office. It's a contract to reimburse the county for fees they would pay out for public defense services for basically codes that are city law codes that we would charge. It's kind of a contract without too much of a actual meat to it, because we don't have to pay public defenders for the city code stuff. We don't have any jailable offenses under the city code that we charge under. So we actually haven't ever cut a check under this contract, but we are required by the state to have one. Last few times we've come before you, it's been a simple renewal. It used to be a evergreen contract, which means it just renewed automatically. Public defender decided that they wanted an affirmative action each year to renew it. So we've been doing resolutions for the past few years. And this year they wanted a new piece of language in the contract. It's the earth-shattering clause that says we will follow the regulations of the public defender, which we were doing anyway. So we added that in there, and that's why this is not a renewal. It's just a signing of an agreement. But I would imagine that unless there's additional language, we would be doing annual renewals from here on out. I'd be happy to answer any questions. The contract that's in the packet incorporates those changes, and the county prosecutor, Eric Hostetler, has already drafted and reviewed those, so they should be okay with them as well.
Any questions for Darren? What is the wish of council?
I move to pass resolution number 1747.
Second.
And motion by Mr. Browning. I cannot say Mr. Browning, has so much trouble. Second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller? Yes. Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Abstain.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Motion carries. And Elaine, if you'll read item 13 and 14.
Resolution number 17-48, a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a partnering agreement with the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission for the Point Railroad Bridge Replacement Project Del-36-11.03. And
Go ahead,
Do you
do
need to
14,
vote?
yes,
Yeah.
14 too.
Yeah. Resolution number 17-49, a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a partnering agreement with the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission for the citywide signals upgrade project phase 1.
So these two agreements before you tonight are, we alluded to these when Bill gave his presentation regarding the point and the signal project at your June meeting. These really formalize our agreement with the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission with respect to these two projects, the largest being the Point project. And there's an extensive amount of red tape that we have to adhere to because we're using federal dollars for these projects, everything from the environmental reviews that have to be done to project timelines and whatnot. All of that is spelled out in that agreement that we have and is referenced in various policy documents. This is our first project with the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission for these kinds of dollars. As we've talked about before, we were very successful at getting the Point project funded because it is the most important project facing the city from a transportation standpoint. So we're asking for your consideration and favorable action tonight on this, but also just pointing out at the same time that it's a big obligation. It's a big obligation of local dollars that we hope to supplement with other funding partners, but there is no guarantee of that. So ultimately, the local obligation is the city of Delaware. So that's a little bit of overview of that project. We met today with the engineering firm that we'll be negotiating with, that will be assisting us with this project. And I'm pleased to say that for the Point project, they have extensive background doing railroad replacement projects. Just completed the Lizelle Road Railroad Bridge project with the city of Columbus, and they bring a lot of experience and expertise to the table. So I think we're getting the right team put together.
Right.
Bill, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just point out on the purpose of the agreements is federal dollars, transportation dollars in general are extremely competitive now. Projects that get funded have to have a very good return on investment. Ours does. Because of the competitive nature, these agreements are now required, and there's 6 key elements within the agreement that you understand. The first, we're agreeing to the scope of the project. We're not going to change that, and the schedule we presented to get it completed. Also, that we will follow the ODOT PVP process, which is very prescriptive process on how to deliver a large project with federal funds, and that this funding commitment, the numbers are in here, are the obligation of both MORPC and the city. Most importantly are the milestone dates and the penalties associated with failing to meet our obligation on any one of those elements. Most critically are the milestone dates. Failing to deliver the project in the time frame that we said we would will have repercussions in our ability to get future funds from MORPC. So we talked to our consultant today, staying on task is our top priority, and having the consultant push forward very hard on these projects. Tom's goal, my goal, Dean's goal is to make sure we fill that funding gap in the next 3 years. So when we get to the point of construction, nothing's going to slow the city down from moving forward. But that same agreement, it's identical agreement between the Point project and the Signals project. The Signals is just $2.5 million versus the $13.3 million for the Point. But it's important to understand that we're not only accepting money, but we're obligating ourselves to deliver this project in that 5 to 6 year time frame that we're committing to.
Construction we're looking at in 2022 to 2023. So that's that time horizon you're looking at. It may seem like a lot, but when you do these transportation projects, you have to take the long view. But that's the time period that we have, obviously, to
What's the match on the signal light piece?
Well, on the signal piece, the 2.5 million is 100% funding. So there's no match on the construction. The design of it is our obligation, and we're estimating about $300,000 cost to do the design on that. And that'll be our obligation. I will say that we are pursuing some additional funding sources to try to cover that engineering cost as well.
And what's the timeline on the signal?
That's actually a lot faster. We should be through the design by the end of 2018 and into construction in 19.
And I guess I know the public during the levy and subsequent to the levy, and even before that, would ask the question, why isn't the railroad paying for this bridge? I think we answered that question when we indicated the railroad, it's their bridge, and the traffic below is not an issue for them. And we got that reaffirmed today. The city of Columbus made that same argument. The railroad has thousands of these bridges in their system. And as far as they're concerned, the bridge is serving its purpose, which is to move rail traffic. It's not to worry about the queues that back up in the AM and the PM. I will point out that our ability to get federal and state dollars for this offsets our local contribution. So I think we have tried to address the public's question is, why isn't somebody else paying for this? Why isn't the railroad? Well, we can't get them to pay for it, but we have identified it, as Bill said, it's a very competitive project to get federal and state dollars for.
Okay, let's go to council on resolution 17-48.
Move for approval of resolution 17-48.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Hellinger. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move for approval of ordinance 17, or resolution 17-48.
49.
49, we just did 49.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Hellinger. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Okay, item 15 is consideration of ordinance number 17-50.
Ordinance number 17-50, an ordinance supplementing the 2017 appropriations ordinance to provide additional funding for land development, engineering, professional services, and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause of this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary to provide for the public peace, safety, health, and welfare of the city, and for the further reason to provide for the timely review of development plans and for the continued utilization of construction inspection services, and as such will be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Thank you. Mr. Farina?
Yes, me again. This is the time of year we usually approach you in terms of appropriating additional funds to cover the cost of providing inspection and plan review services. And during the budget, we estimate about half that cost perhaps and appropriate those funds. And then as we see the year develop, we can appropriate additional funds. I'll say that this year it is looking like it's going to be probably the busiest year in a decade, even before the recession. We're looking at right now 23 active construction projects right now that we're working on, and additional 13 that are reviewed or spooled up and ready to go to construction. So that's an immense workload. We'll have as many as 12 contract inspectors working in the city this year. We're anticipating just under $900,000 of cost this year for the contract inspection, for both inspection and plan review. And we've appropriated $500,000 in the 2017 appropriations budget. So we're asking for additional $400,000 to cover that anticipated cost. We are anticipating fees of, if all the projects move forward, say they will, of about $1.5 million. So the money we've appropriated will cover the cost of our contract inspectors and our plan review, also cover right-of-way inspections, and it will cover about 67% of the time of the key staff that works on land development initiatives, or about $370,000 of their cost. So in total, we'll have about $1.25 million of anticipated expense through the year. Of the fees we're collecting, it's a little higher than the cost, but not all the fees will be expended, especially in inspection. This year, some of the money will actually fund some of the inspection that will go into next year as well. So tonight, we're just presenting that the need for the additional $400,000, which is already covered in fees that will be collected. And I can answer, I know there's some concerns and some questions regarding fees lately that have come up, and I can answer any questions regarding that. I will say that the 12 inspectors, having 12 inspectors out there is the most we've ever had. It's getting to the point at this level where we should really contemplate probably, instead of having so many contract inspectors, potentially bringing back an inspector, because right now we have one staff member trying to monitor 12 individual inspectors out there. Something we'll talk more about during the operations time. It actually costs less to the project for a full-time city inspector than it does for the contract inspectors based on the contract inspection rate. So it's something we can talk about, but we thought it would be a heavy year, but we didn't know it would be this much work this year. So we are with land development and engineering fees.
Okay. What is the wish of council? Do you want to vote on this tonight, or do you want to take it to another reading? Okay. Stein.
So I move to suspend the rules requiring three readings on ordinance 17-50.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Browning. I think that was you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move for approval of the emergency clause in ordinance 17-50.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Browning. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move for approval of ordinance 17-50.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Browning. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Motion carries. Okay, item 16 is consideration of ordinance number 17-51. If you'll please read this in the record.
Ordinance number 17-51, an ordinance approving the sale of a solid waste department 2006 International Recycling truck that has outgrown its useful serviceable life.
It's my last issue for the night. We're used to this. We have to bring these before we have a piece of property we have to dispose of that may be more than $5,000 in value. Just a council action is required authorizing the sale of that. It will be sold through Gov Deals. On our refuse vehicles, we try to get 7 good solid years of frontline service out of those. Then we try to rotate those trucks down to a backup position for another 3 or 4 years. This particular truck was the backup truck. We did already purchase a truck this year, so another truck has become the backup, so it's time to rotate this one completely out of the fleet. We're estimating itself more than $5,000. Just so you know, these trucks right now cost us just about $250,000 to replace these vehicles. Very expensive vehicles. So we do try to keep those as long as we can, even in the backup position. But it comes to a point where it'll cost us more than the value of the vehicle to keep trying to maintain that vehicle. So we rotate it out of the fleet. So tonight we'll be approving the sale of this 2006 International truck.
One thing to throw in, and it's just tangentially related to this piece of legislation. There's been some thought number been at 5,000 is awfully low, given that it's been there for a long time. And we've kind of moved beyond that, so that maybe a future discussion would be council's appetite for maybe raising that threshold, so you don't have to have so many of these pieces of legislation. But I just wanted to put that on your radar while we're on the subject.
Yeah.
Okay.
Real quick, is 11 years about the average for that piece of
The 7 years is we put more than 14,000 hours on those vehicles. These are primary trucks that are running from 7 a.m. till 2:30 p.m., 5 and sometimes 6 days a week, week after week. So we work these trucks very hard. Thankfully, because we have problems immediately. But trying to run them past 7 years, they'll spend more time out of the fleet, and it will impact the refuse operation. So 7 years, 6 years, 8 years is a number that's worked for us. And then trying to keep that in the backup position enough so when a primary truck goes down, we still have a piece of equipment to be able to maintain refuse and recycling service on a daily basis.
Is there a motion?
I move to pass ordinance number 1751.
I think you have to suspend the rules first.
I'd like to suspend the rules.
Don't-
Good vote.
I have a second?
Second.
Wait, which?
Okay. I'll second.
Why are you so confused, Lisa?
Never mind.
Okay.
No, George and I both had the
Yeah.
same. He was confused first, and he made me.
I'm blaming him.
him.
I have a motion by Mr. Browning, a second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I move for passage of ordinance number 1751.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Browning, a second by Mr. Schaefer. No discussion, just roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, item 17 is consideration of ordinance number 17-52.
Ordinance number 17-52, an ordinance to authorize and direct the city manager to execute and sign a petition on behalf of the city of Delaware, Ohio as the proximate city within the meaning of section 349.01M of the Ohio Revised Code to add property to the Berkshire Landing New Community Authority under chapter 349 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause. This ordinance is declared to be an emergency measure necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, or safety of the city, and for the further reason that this ordinance is required to be immediately effective to provide for the timely consideration of the petition by the county, prior to the expiration of certain provisions in the law that make the establishment of such community authority possible, thus securing for the city and its residents additional economic benefits for the new community authority, which are needed to provide for the health, welfare, and safety of the residents of the city. Wherefore, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Could you repeat that? No, just kidding. Mr. Shellman?
Yes.
This is yours.
Which one are we on? I'm sorry, I was zoning out.
So-
I got it at 2 in the morning. Which one?
This is the proximate city. We
Oh,
did this.
Proximate City, oh, okay, sorry. So Proximate City, we've done these on numerous occasions, and I do apologize, I'm just counting it down. We've done these on numerous occasions. In fact, we've done an extension on similar ones down in Powell. This is an expansion of the one out by the Outlet Mall. We had a little bit of confusion because the Outlet Mall has actually two parts. It has the Outlet Mall part, which we get different kind of revenue streams sharing on the income tax after a certain number of years, as well as the millage. But there's also a residential part that we didn't get anything from because those are houses, and that's not really the point of why we wanted to get some sort of cut on the millage. So this is an expansion for residential. We don't think it has the same impact on Delaware, so we didn't feel comfortable asking them to add the millage to that property. So we were recommending approval of the expansion without any consideration. So it falls on the not impacting Delaware side as opposed to the impacting side of Delaware.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any motions?
Suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on ordinance 17-52.
Any seconds?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mrs. Keller. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I move for approval of the emergency clause on ordinance 17-52.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Ms. Keller. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I move for approval of ordinance 17-52.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Ms. Keller. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Item 18 is consideration of ordinance number 17-53. If you'll please read this into the record.
Ordinance number 17-53, an ordinance approving a community reinvestment area agreement and school compensation agreement with Second Half Ventures LLC, Delaware City Schools, Delaware Area Career Center, and the City of Delaware for investments in real property improvements on parcel 519-432-25-022-000 and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause. This ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary to provide for the public peace, safety, health, and welfare of the city and is necessary to finalize negotiations, and as such will be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Good job.
All right. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. Glad to be back here. Just trying to wake us up again. All right, we have before you a request for the city manager to enter into a 100% 15-year CRA agreement with a school compensation agreement for a new construction project on 14 West William Street, the former site of the West End Grill. This new facility will house a new restaurant that will hire 9 full-time equivalent employees with a payroll of $350,000. The applicant asked for a CRA abatement to assist with their $310,000 construction project. The savings to the company would amount to approximately $70,640.85 in gross, all caps, savings after 15 years. From that, as part of the school compensation agreement, the company would pay 30% of what the schools normally would have received directly to the schools. This would be about $1,170.04 per year, or $17,550.60 after 15 years. Highlighted point, pay attention. This amount is 2 times more than what the schools receive on the vacant parcel. The net savings on the project would be $53,090.25. This would be a 166.37% ROI for the city, with $97,125 in income taxes after 15 years multiplied by an in-plan multiplier.
They have all that.
We do, we have all that.
Yeah.
We got all that?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
That's.
He gave me a script and everything.
No, we have word for word.
Yeah.
We read it all last time.
All right, great. Well, I guess I'll skip ahead. Now I'm going to introduce Mr. David DeStefano and let him speak about the project since we know about it. Oh, yes. Thank you for your time.
Madam Mayor, City Council members, I'm David DeStefano, owner of 12 West and also owner of 14 West. So I know you guys have been here.
Address for clerk.
12 West William Street, Delaware, Ohio. I'll try to keep this brief and happy to answer any questions. But this has been a project taking a long time in the making. 2.5, 3 years ago, West End Grill was literally falling down. Their chimney fell on our roof before it collapsed from the inside. So I bought the property because it sat vacant for about a year or so, and I've learned the hard way that new building costs are 3 times as expensive as what it would take when I went and bought 12 West. So it took a while to figure out a formula to make it work, but we think we've done that now with a local contractor. We're hoping to move ground in about a month. We're very close, but it's taken a long time to get there. This is of great need. It's great help to get this going because it's a very expensive project and it's quite the investment. And for such a sort of small space, we're only about 20 feet wide, about 100 feet deep. And it's amazing how much costs are these days and what's gone up on new builds. So that's why I'm here this evening. I appreciate getting here and working with the city has been a great experience, and I appreciate all the help that the whole team has done.
Any questions? Will this expand 12 West or will this be a separate business?
Good question. Legally, it'll be the same restaurant because we'll have a doorway connecting interior, but from the street, from concept-wise, it'll be a different restaurant. So we'll pay a sales tax under 12 West, but again, from the sort of street level and from the consumer standpoint, it'll be 2 different restaurants.
Okay.
Two different kitchens?
2 different kitchens. Yeah, our current kitchen can only handle the capacity we have right now. So we thought about that, but we wouldn't be able to satisfy our current guests if we tried to expand over to the next door without building a new kitchen. And so that's the numbers you heard this evening were only for the building. That doesn't handle furniture, fixtures, and equipment for the restaurant. So
Same menu and things as 12 West?
different concept. Yeah,
Okay.
we're trying to attract maybe a broader audience, a different target than our current customer base.
Exciting.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. We're hopeful that construction will take around 90 days, but it's not that big. So hopefully it's a one story. So we're hopeful, and we'll see how that goes. You may be laughing at me here in a couple months. So
I won't be laughing at you. I'm hopeful for you.
thank you.
Optimistic but hopeful.
So this is very similar to the CRA that came before you in June for the project on Winter Street. It's a redevelopment of an existing building. This is a redevelopment of an empty parcel that it's really infill, and it's been, it makes a lot of sense. I know that. Yeah, I mean, this is what this was intended for, so.
Okay.
We'd recommend your favorable action this evening.
Do you have a motion?
I move to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on, what are we at here?
1753.
On ordinance 1753.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Browning. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I move for approval of the emergency clause of ordinance 17-53.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Browning. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones? Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move for approval of ordinance 17-53.
Second.
Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Browning. Roll call, please. I was going to ask you a question, but I decided not to.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr? Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Do you support Dora? No, just kidding.
That was quite interesting to listen to.
Yes. You see, you got an education.
We did.
Good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you, council members.
Thanks, Kelsey.
Yes.
If you need taste testers, council's of great people.
I know, we have lots of food over here.
We love your restaurant.
Love the tacos.
I know. Okay, 19 ordinance, consideration of ordinance 17-54.
Reading?
Yeah, all three of them.
All three, yes, do it all.
All right, ordinance number 17-54, an ordinance for Trade Plus Communities for approval of a rezoning amendment from B3 Community Business District to B3 PMU Community Business District with a planned mixed-use overlay district for Burr Oak Commons containing 92 apartment units on approximately 20.06 acres located on the north side of State Route 37, just west of Westfield Shopping Center and just east of Lantern Chase subdivision. Ordinance number 17-55, an ordinance for Trade Plus Communities for approval of conditional use permit allowing the placement of a PMU planned mixed-use overlay district for Burr Oak Commons containing 92 apartment units on approximately 20.06 acres located on the north side of State Route 37, just west of Westfield Shopping Center and just east of Lantern Chase subdivision. And ordinance number 17-56, an ordinance for Trade Plus Communities for approval of a preliminary development plan for Burr Oak Commons containing 92 apartment units on approximately 20.06 acres, Zone B3 PMU Community Business District with a planned mixed-use overlay district and located on the north side of State Route 37, just west of West Shopping Center and just east of Lantern Chase subdivision.
Good job. Okay, Finance Director's report. Oh, we're not going to hear from those because that's all the first
It's all
reading.
first readings.
Dave's not here. I'm sorry. Dean?
So this is the mid-year report through June 30th. This is going to be fairly involved. I hope you're sitting on the edge of your seats because you're interested in hearing what I have now. We're pretty good shape budget-wise. I do have a few concerns about our tax collections. I've mentioned that before. We're up, but not where we had projected. It could change yet before the end of the year, but we'll keep an eye on that. And that things are pretty much as anticipated, with the exception of Bill's engineering fees. We got to figure out the correlation between how much he collects and how much we actually have in direct expenses, because right now it's our most profitable operation. So he did. I know he indicated there was a supplemental tonight. The actual collections are up. It's like $700,000 a year compared to last year. That kind of throws a little wrench in trying to look at trends and what does that ultimately mean. So, but we'll keep on top of that. Entertain any questions you may have.
Okay. Manager's report.
Just real quickly, security recommendations for City Hall. We're recommending a one point of access in City Hall. This really comes after we've done some audits, some security audits that the police department has conducted, and we've had a third party conduct those as well. And the recommendation is that we limit the public access in and out of City Hall to the south entrance of the building, where most of the public now enters the building. Rarely do we get people coming off Sandusky Street into the entrance that you have to walk up the stairs for. That's very rare. And the north entrance is principally employees. Occasionally you get the public coming through there. So I wanted to make sure that this is a recommendation that's come up from staff to me. I think I mentioned in my last bi-weekly report. I just wanted to get council's any input you have. Would eliminate the ability to open those first floor doors on Sandusky Street at some point if we have some sort of an event. It just means that really for the Monday through Friday 8 to 5 traffic, it would be that through the south door. And we would obviously sign it appropriately. That's phase 1, and phase 2 is obviously moving the receptionist, which right now you're not going to see that receptionist that much if you're coming through that door, down to this end of the building, to the south end of the building. So that's phase 2 will require some additional dollars. But it's unfortunate that you have to do this. You want to be able to have the public have access to their building, but you also want to take into consideration the security of having 3 open public access doors today. So that's item 1. I hope you had a chance to look at the Parks and Natural Resources quarterly report. That's something that provides a really good overview of what's going on in that department. A lot of good information in there. Of course, Ironman is week, as Carolyn reminded me today. I say it's next week. It's next Sunday. No, she said it's this week. She's right. It's Sunday. It's a big event, and we're looking forward to really having over 2,400 athletes, 1,000 volunteers, and
1,110 volunteers to be exact.
so we've got a lot of volunteers. There's an Iron Kids race on Saturday morning. If you know anybody, it's low cost, it's a good cause, and it occurs right at Selby Field. Also, we gave you a briefing memorandum on the Ohio Medical Marijuana Program. We're not obviously going to talk about that tonight, but at some point that'll have to be scheduled from discussion. It was kind of timely because we did get the health department's kind of their position on that tonight. So that's good information. Kudos to Darren and to Chris Ballard, who was here tonight, for putting that together. But that will give you really, I think, the information you need to be more well informed on that issue. So
his wife is taking the bar exam tomorrow, so I let him go early, but he did want to be here to get you any questions. Sorry, girlfriend.
That's it. Okay, council comments? Mr. Jones? Mrs. Scarlett?
One quick one.
Okay.
About a month ago, I brought up a concern to the city manager about the splash pad having no sign that says no climbing on the tall toy. It says climbing, but not no climbing. So I was hoping that maybe I could get an update as to when we're going to put something there that says no climbing.
I thought we had, and Mr. Miller, I'll put you on the spot. And
Yep, we didn't want to put the lettering back on that because they were peeling it off. So we were going to spray paint it on there, and I think it was going on this week, actually. It didn't go on today, actually. Yeah, but we were going to put it on with paint so they couldn't peel it off, because that was the problem before.
Yeah,
It said no climbing, I took it off.
You can climb.
it says climbing, but and then just the sand and the whatever the electronic thing isn't working.
Yeah, the electronic, it's not, because they fixed that once already, and just recently too. So I'll have to check that again and make sure if it's still working or not too.
Okay, it wasn't working.
Yeah, we're trying to look at some different options with the sand, because it seems to go down the filters too much and the kids throw it out too much too. So we're trying to look at some different options that will allow the sand to stay in there longer.
It was full of standing water, so maybe we could.
Yeah.
Or let's talk to Game Time and ask them for a solution.
About something
maybe,
other than,
because we paid a lot of money to have them just sitting there. So.
yeah, we're gonna look at a larger material in there that wouldn't go down there but we also, the kids have been throwing the sand out there too. So we put something larger in there, they might throw that out too. So yeah, we're gonna look at some other solutions on that.
It's fun. Thank you for all your work. The park looks fantastic there.
Comments?
None.
Mr. Shar? Salinger?
Not a thing.
Just real quickly, Roger Collin brought up the halfway house stuff thing. I would ask maybe you guys here to let's take a look at what other cities do in terms of zoning.
Yeah.
Just with the idea that let's put some regulations in place so that we have some control over these. You know, it's one hand there for positive thing in terms of turning people's lifetime. Neighbors sometimes see the negative thing and want some assurances. Sometimes we have neighborhood issues. So you could get
We'll follow it up and get a report back to you. Yep.
That's all I have.
And someone's going to report back to him also, right?
Yes, yeah, that's what I indicated to him.
Right, okay. Yeah, Ironman Sunday, anybody else wants to sign up? We're still looking for more volunteers, as always. But it's gonna be good, rain's out of the system, and so we'll have a really good race, I'm hopeful. George is gonna ride his motorcycle. Tomorrow morning, Tom and I are gonna meet with Berkshire JED meeting with Jeff George and Bill Holtree to discuss a JED. I got a nice letter today. Says, Mayor Riggle, please have hotels built in the city of Delaware. From Matt. I just thought that was really sweet. So somebody else wants hotels, not just me. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mayor Riggle, just real quick, I just wanted to make sure everyone got this information. I didn't get any responses back today regarding the Helocast training over the next 3 days in town. I sent it to your emails.
Some of us have to work during the day.
When you get a chance, look at it. It's a great.
It's, yeah, there's good information, but I think, Jim, you'll probably benefit from your neighborhood getting the majority of trips across the south side of town. Getting to see the National Guard operations.
You see somebody dangling from a.
Don't be alarmed if you see
strap.
people hanging from helicopters for the next few days.
Yeah, is there anything on our Facebook page?
Lee's not here and he was aware of this. I'm not sure it is, but
I'll have Kelsey follow up
yeah,
tomorrow.
we'll get it, or on the Nextdoor website also, so people are aware of what's going on. We don't get flooded with calls, get flooded with calls. There's people hanging from helicopters going through town.
And just real quick, what do we do in Central? Because if I have one more person ask me, are we doing anything to East Side Central?
We're
soon?
there'll be base repairs, more base repairs and leveling spots out. That's where,
This year?
this year, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
The big fix is.
later.
we're working on,
I had 3 today ask me, Colin
Yeah.
asked me. Okay.
yes, it's
Motion to
important.
adjourn.
So moved.
Now, not the one in the corner. You moved it?
Yeah, I know.